It is Tuesday, July 6th at 7 p.m. I'll call the regular city council meeting of the city of Columbia to order. Can I get a roll call?
Nemitz. Wrestler. Hook. Holtkamp.
Here.
Martins. Here. Riddle. Here. Garmer.
Here.
Corey.
Here.
Let's get everybody to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Don't have any proclamations or recognition. If you're here for the public input at this time, if you're here for the discussion of the annexation, we'll have you hold those till after that discussion at that time. Is anybody else here for any other items of public input? If you have items that you'd like to discuss, I'll ask you to step forward to the microphone. Okay. Yes, sir. If you'd step up to the microphone.
My name is Jack Whalen, and I'd like to know how come they put in a new bridge on Quarry Road, and we got an inch and a half rain, and it flooded over the road. That's on Palmer Creek.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have you. Chris, we'll have you.
Saying the new culverts underneath Quarry Road?
I think they did put new ones under there.
Yeah, there was. It's not designed for a 100-year storm. It's only designed to carry
An inch and a half of rain is a 100-year storm?
We-
No, I don't believe that.
Well,
No.
all you gotta do is look at the mud. Ask anybody in Goodern.
Which one are you talking about?
You only put a new one on Quarry Road.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not aware that it went underwater.
Oh, yeah. There was mud all over the road.
I mean, it's only designed for a 30-year.
Well, it was more than an inch and a half of rain.
It was, if it wasn't.
It was about 4 inches.
No, it was either an inch and a half or 2.5. Because I gauge it, I'm right up the road from it, and I gauge it all the time. I wasn't sure which morning it was I went through there. But it was either the inch and a half rain or the 2.5 inch.
Okay.
And it went over the road. Okay. From there on,
Yes, sir.
I don't think anybody knows where that water goes to after it runs off their houses, down the road, wherever. They don't know where it goes. Well, it goes down to Fish Lake. From Fish Lake, the farmers have to pay to pump it across the levee because it was put in to pump out the flood water and the seep water off the farmers' fields, off the runoffs. But all these subdivisions you put in over there go down Palmer Creek, and the farmers got to pay to pump it over. Nobody else pays for it. It's a levee district. One thing the city ought to address, they can't keep doing that to Palmer Creek because it's washing the banks out, and everybody living along it, their backyards are falling in. That's all I got to say about it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Just to address, we will be meeting with the Predator Pond Levee District here shortly to discuss some of those issues with the Palmer Creek. Any other public input? Okay. We'll move on to comments and announcements. One of the most recurring concerns that have been voiced to me is the fact that the city code is not available on our website. I understand the website has recently been revamped and the revised code will be available online once we get it completed. In January, Doug sent an email, red line version of the code for review and feedback. We need to make sure this is a priority coming up here shortly. Doug will send the draft out to you guys, and please address any comments or concerns to him at that time, so we can get the code published online for people to be able to pull up our ordinances and things like that. And then once we get those, the input from the council, we'll have a discussion at committee meetings in August. But I would like to have this to Doug or myself in the next couple of weeks where we can get this discussed, revamped, and then posted online on our website. So that's my comments. Okay? Any comments from the alderman?
Great if we had a more interactive zoning map too. It's bad.
Okay. We'll make that note there, see if we can update that. Any comments from department directors at this time? Mr. Brim?
The council may recall during the last budget conversation that we did program a sixth medic in the EMS budget for this fiscal year. It's something that we had advised the council that we would likely hold off on until such time as we were in a position to kind of fully investigate that. Unfortunately, it's a situation that's come up sooner than we had anticipated. Chief Lamprecht is here this evening. She has a number of situations that are coming up in the very near future where we have several holes, so to speak, in our schedule for the EMS department. Unfortunately, it's a situation where our part-timers are becoming more and more scarce, and a lot of our holes that are coming up are actually occurring on weekends, and it's a situation where we can't get part-timers to fill in on these weekend shifts. It's resulted in a situation where our full-time paramedics have been stretched very thin, either through their regular 48-hour tours or through being forced in to cover holes, other parts in the schedule. Comparatively looking at other agencies in the area, including Staunton, New Baden, Glen Carbon, Monroe County, Muscuda, Maryville, O'Fallon, and Highland, out of those agencies that staff their own EMS departments, we are right in the middle of the pack as far as calls per 1,000 population with 100 on the nose. You've got a high of Staunton at 168.42, Highland at a low of 68.27. However, when you lay our staffing against those same parameters and against those same agencies, Columbia falls to the bottom third, with only Maryville coming in at 0.27 full-time paramedics per 1,000 population, with Columbia at 0.33. Staunton at the high end is at 1.16 full-time paramedics per 1,000 population. It's something that even if we were to add an additional paramedic, which we would like to proceed with immediately, even adding one still puts us at the top of that bottom third band. So unless we hear any objections from the council, or if there's additional information that you'd like for our next meeting for discussion, Chief Lamprecht and I would like permission from the council to proceed with advertising for the full-time medic position.
That is in addition to filling the one vacancy.
We have a full,
We have 5.
Right.
But we have 6 full shifts.
Okay.
So we've been down since I came.
Okay.
so we would be taking it up to 6 full-time medics.
Anyone have any questions? No? Okay.
Hearing no-
Yes, Mayor.
This wasn't
Alderman
part of
Yates.
our budget.
Yes, ma'am, it was included in the budget, but it was something that,
On April 28th, right. So it was what I had addressed on that evening at City Council, when you had all the questions.
Yeah, I thought it was already, that was it.
no, but we just wanted to make sure that the council was aware that we would like to proceed with that and make sure that there weren't any objections to moving forward with that. All right, thank you. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the consent agenda. Items I, 4, and 5 will be pulled from the consent agenda and considered under unfinished business. Are there any other items? that-
Andrew, you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, go ahead.
bust through?
Sorry.
So consent agenda as amended, there's 7 items. The first one is a motion to approve minutes of the June 21st, 2021 regular city council meeting. The second is a motion to approve payment of vouchers for the period of June 12th, 2021 through June 25th, 2021, totaling $145,616.31. The third is a motion to approve statement of funds for May 31st, 2021. The fourth is a motion to approve special event permit for Columbia Gymnastic Association Columbia Days Festival and Parade occurring on August 20th through 21st, 2021. The fifth is a motion to approve special event permit for Historic Main Street Columbia Association, which is Ghoulish Night Out, October 14th, 2021. The sixth is a motion to approve special event permit for City of Columbia Halloween Hijinks, which is October 30th, 2021. And the seventh and final item is a motion to approve special event permit for City of Columbia Bright Night Christmas Parade, which is December 4th, 2021.
Are there any other items that anyone wishes to pull from the consent agenda?
I had a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
This is on the payment vouchers, and Doug, maybe you can address this.
Yes, sir.
And this is on page 21. I'm looking at that, I don't know what it is, Metro East Municipal JNT, joint, I assume, $50,000. What is that?
That's the Metro East Municipal Joint Action Water Agency. It's the partnership that we have with the
Okay.
former Cahokia Common Fields. It's the split in the billing to Illinois American for that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Time will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read. Paul, second by Alderman Martins. Roll call.
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hook, Holdcamp,
Yes.
Martins,
Yes.
Riddle, Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Next item, we'll move to unfinished business. We have a motion to approve purchase of a tandem dump truck from Rush Truck Center in the amount of $135,759.66. Be State of Illinois Contract 19-416-CMS-BOSS 4-P-8607. Motion to approve that. Alderman Holcamp,
I'll second.
Alderman Nemitz, roll call.
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hook, Holdcamp,
Yes.
Martins, Riddle, Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Okay. Next item we'll discuss is resolution number 2021-12, approving a tourism grant of $2,500 to the Columbia Gymnastics Association for the purpose of funding the musical entertainment for the organization's 2021 Columbia Days event.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and take this item.
Yes, sir.
If the council so chooses, we can take action on this since this was listed on the agenda. I did want to provide a little bit more context for items 4 and 5 that were pulled from the consent agenda. As the council may recall from our previous discussions regarding the tourism grants, this is a new program that was just implemented this year. Well, technically it was implemented in 2019, but unfortunately the COVID pandemic happened and the program was stagnant throughout 20. Coming into 2021, this program is funded through the hotel motel tax that is imposed on overnight stays at lodging facilities within the city. Some concerns were brought up regarding the applicability of this grant to do these two programs with regards to meeting the stated goal of putting heads in beds or generating overnight stays within the City of Columbia lodging establishments. Through earlier discussions and discussions at the committee level with Mr. Dunnicky and Sue Spargo, who also sit on that tourism grant committee along with myself, it's something that I had questioned as well regarding the applicability of this particular grant for these programs. However, it is something that, as it is still in its infancy, we are still learning as we go with regards to the administration of the program. It's something that they are not able to articulate the number of hotel stays that were generated by these events in previous years. However, I think we all can agree that at least Columbia Days, that event has been successful year over year for the City of Columbia for the past several decades. It's just tying into the actual hotel stays, it's difficult to articulate because that's nothing that we have required in the past because there was no purpose for that. It's something that if the council so chooses, I would probably recommend that we approve both of these items this evening with the understanding that the taxpayer is not impacted through these programs and that they are generated through the hotel motel tax that's imposed. It's nothing that's coming out of our general fund or any other property tax that's levied against the city. Going forward, there are reporting requirements in place that do apply to both of these initiatives, where they will be required to submit documentation regarding the success, quote unquote, of the event with regards to generating the hotel stays. Using that criteria, it's something that I feel comfortable that we would be able to evaluate these fully in subsequent years, should it be something that the organizers would wish to pursue. Furthermore, it's something that through the application process, we have already made tweaks to the application itself to try to elicit more of the information that we're looking for in order to make our determination. However, it's something that the committee felt would be unfair to approach both Main Street and the Turners Association and ask them to resubmit on an application that was basically tweaked in response to their submittals. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time on this item.
Anyone have any questions? Yeah, Alderman Nemitz?
Here, I had asked when the one came up for Songs for Soldiers about the results, the feedback, and how will that be triggered? Will that be part of your office and Spargo's office? Will they just be required? Is there something?
There's an actual form, yes ma'am, it's available on our website that all of the applicants are made aware of prior to submitting the application with all of the different requirements that are required as part of the post-event reporting.
So it'll automatically be triggered, so we will receive
Yes,
that
ma'am.
information in order to make.
Not only to advise the council on the success of these programs that have been either approved or considered, but that will also be factoring into the evaluation process for subsequent years' grant programs.
Thank you.
Yes.
Alderman Garmer?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Doug. So I see that the tourism grant for the Turner Hall, that one had like 12 estimated hotel nights, and then
Correct.
the other one has 5 to 10. And what'd you guys base that on?
That was submitted by the actual applicant themselves. That's nothing that we had determined.
We didn't go to Hampton Inn and say, hey, what do you guys got for that?
And that's kind of where we were coming in at. It's difficult to track that
Right.
because it's nothing that Hampton Inn has been
Can't
asked to
make them
track.
do it, right?
Right.
So you can subjectively ask, hey, where are you staying at? Or,
But it
"Where
is
you
something
going?"
that is required. They are required to work with the Hampton Inn
Right.
and any future lodging to determine the number of hotel stays that were generated as a result of the event.
Right, and then they're both qualified for the full amount, with the one had 17 out of 21, the other one had 19. And I just wonder where that cutoff was at.
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was something that the committee, we actually worked on in the evaluation of these applications. I think we put in 80 and above, 80%, if you will, is full funding, and then it's prorated downward.
That makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Next item, or can we get a motion to go ahead and approve the resolution number 2021-12? Need a motion to approve that item?
I will make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Garmer?
I will second it.
Mr. Corey? Roll call?
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hook, Holtcamp,
Yes.
Martins. Riddle. Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Next item kind of ties into the same situation. This is going to be resolution number 2021-13. It's going to be approving the tourism grant of $2,500 to Historic Main Street Columbia Association for the purpose of funding musical entertainment and advertising for the organization's 2021 Taste of Columbia event. A motion to approve that item.
Mayor, I think Mary Ellen has some
Oh.
questions on that.
Would you like
Do
to
you want to make
discuss?
a motion first and
Oh,
second, and then
whatever.
and then I'll ask a question, or do you want to?
That's perfectly fine.
Just, what I wanted to ask on that one was, with regard to that, I know part of that stipulation in that document was 2 weeks prior to those businesses on Main Street affected by the closure would be notified. I'm sorry. Would be notified, I'm usually loud enough, it doesn't matter. Would be notified, but did we have any feedback the last time?
We're going to be discussing that special event permit later because of that reason, so.
Okay.
If we can address that, since we'll be addressing
Fine.
the topic
We
specifically.
wanted to break that out as a separate item simply because of the impact to Main Street on the actual special event. But right now, we're just looking at the actual tourism grant side of it.
Okay, that tourism grant, I'll make the motion if you're looking for
Okay.
that, Mayor.
Alderman Nemitz makes the motion to approve. Mr. Riddle? Okay, roll call?
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hook, Holtcamp,
Yes.
Martins,
Yes.
Riddle. Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Last item on unfinished business is the continued discussion of the proposed annexation agreement, annexation and R3 zoning of a 54.06 acre tract of land in unincorporated St. Clair County for Bluff Ridge Estate subdivision.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Scott Dunicky, Director of Community Development. As you mentioned, this is a continuation of the discussion from the last meeting regarding the annexation agreement, annexation and R3 zoning proposed. It was discussed in full. I will mention to you that I have a copy of the presentation if anybody wants to look at that and for reference, should any of the discussion lend to that. The main concerns expressed at the last meeting were the developer's responsibility to make some improvements to Rook Road, the street lighting, and an effort to address some recent car break-ins in some of the nearby residential areas. It was suggested some enhanced street lighting would be appropriate in excess of, so in other words, our current spacing requirements are 300 feet between light posts. And so the draft language, I'll cover the draft language in a moment. Also, the minimum masonry requirements should be written into the annexation agreement to guarantee those standards rather than just letting it go to the covenants where we don't have control over. And then also there was some mention about the bridge on Hoffman Estates Drive and the questions on whether that being on the emergency access route, whether or not that bridge would be able to handle the weight of a fire truck or any additional traffic. In an effort to address those concerns, I did draft for your consideration some additions to the annexation agreement. To address the first point listed regarding traffic impacts to Rook Road, I modified H to add, in lieu of improving Rook Road, the city shall, actually, I've got two words. The city may require the developer, as a condition of final plat approval, to contribute funds toward future improvements to Rook Road between the main subdivision interests and Hoffman Estates Drive in an amount and manner to be mutually agreed upon. And then the rest of that last sentence is the same, except inserting the word otherwise. And then the other three, other items were addressed as follows. In consideration of the concessions and variations granted by the city herein, the developer also agrees to the following provisions. At a minimum, streetlights meeting city standards shall be provided at intersections, each cul-de-sac and dead end, and at no more than 250-foot intervals in mid-block locations. A temporary cul-de-sac shall be provided at the terminus of the paved street that intersects the emergency access easement. This shall remain in place to serve as a turnaround facility until such time a paved street is extended in the future, if that does happen. And the temporary cul-de-sac shall be designed and constructed with features such as removable bollards or other barriers to discourage routine use while allowing quick removal in case of emergency. And then the third one, the subdivision shall exceed the minimum masonry requirements of zoning code chapter 17.43. At least 50% of the homes shall have exterior walls constructed of face brick or natural stone on a minimum of 3 sides, including the front facade between the foundation and eaves. That is what the code requires regardless. And this is the enhanced part. The remaining 50% shall at a minimum have a front facade constructed of face brick or natural stone between the foundations of eaves. And those requirements shall be indicated on the plat submittals the same way we would normally do a subdivision in terms of identifying what lots would have which brick configuration assigned to them. So those are the changes that I made based on the direct comments that were heard. Regarding the comment on the bridge, that's a little bit of a different situation, and if you'd like that to be addressed, I'll have to get together with the city attorney to figure out what mechanism we can use, since that the developer just has access to that drive and that bridge. He doesn't own it. So there may be some problems with being able to require that, given the fact that he doesn't have any ownership. But I can certainly get together with the city attorney to figure out if there's a mechanism that can be used for that. Once again, I'll just mention, I've got the presentation from the last meeting. Should anybody want me to reference any of those slides, and be happy to stand for any further questions or stay available for further questions.
Alderman Holcamp?
A question on II. The word temporary cul-de-sac. Now, as far as a code perspective, it's a real cul-de-sac, right? It's not something that's, made out of dirt or something. I mean, it's a real cul-de-sac, meet code.
What we had planned on was something similar to what we've used previously in subdivisions. I know Brellinger was one that used it at the end of a street that was temporarily dead-ended, that was planned to be extended in a future phase of the subdivision. It's basically, I guess, the street carried on through, and it looked like a dead end, but they added asphalt ears, if you will, to form the circle. So it's a temporary pavement that would be removed then when the street goes through.
Okay, so it would be, so it doesn't need to meet the current codes, 10-inch concrete or whatever, all the
No,
good stuff.
it's temporary on purpose.
Will that support, if we're using it as a turnaround or something, will that support it? Fire trucks, EMS vehicles turning around on a temporary structure?
Oh, it'll be asphalted, and it'll have, Chris, I mean,
I just wonder what
You know
the
what the
standard.
spec-
It's not dirt or rock or whatever, and again, it's temporary, but like Scott said, it could be permanent too, I mean. Well, it could be permanent. And if we're using it for
Oh.
purposes that it's gonna deteriorate, who's responsible to take care of it if it doesn't meet the city code?
There's a letter
The-
of credit on it.
yeah. There's a separate agreement that gets executed for that spells out the specific details that go along with that. We would
Something,
base it off of one of the previous ones we used.
We've done this for the first time with Grellinger and then Walnut Ridge before that.
But they went through though, I mean, those are,
This is planning to go through.
okay.
I mean, whenever the next phase possibly of Grellinger or the Wellbacher property, I mean, it will get connected someday,
Okay.
I would imagine. I
Okay,
mean,
just-
beforehand, I mean, it was left as rock or Pioneer Ridge is kind of like dirt back in the day, but we don't do that.
Yeah,
anymore.
that's what I'm kind of getting at, or
It's
temporary
improved-
buildings and
it's improved
temporary,
surface, so.
okay.
Another possible solution, Alderman Holcamp, would be they could just reconfigure things to do it as a cul-de-sac street that just has a similar configuration that would stay in, the street configuration would stay in the place, but the access to the emergency access would remain something to where they could remove them quickly.
Okay. As long as there's a
That is
standard,
that is a possibility as well. We haven't discussed that with the developer yet, but that was just something I thought of since it came up.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from council? No? Okay. At this time, anybody from the public that would like to speak, we'll have you step forward to the podium. And we'll have you state your name.
I'm Darrell Hoffman, and I live there on Hoffman Estates Drive. And when you go to do Rook Road there, right as you go into our entrance, that culvert, since Burlinger subdivision's been in, contains a whole lot of extra water with the runoff there, and that watershed there has been coming over the top of the road and actually washing our driveway out. I've been fixing that for several years now, but that culvert is actually too small to hold the volume of water there. So whenever you look at working on Rook Road there, that needs to be addressed and improved and a larger culvert put in there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm Mark Tepfer, and I'm a resident of Brellinger subdivision. I also happen to be a member of the HOA there, so I've had some opportunity to talk to lots of folks there and some of the neighbors. When I purchased in Brellinger in 2006, I was aware of the master comprehensive plan, and in there where it says the Northview district is set out to be low density, which it also says in there is R1 and R2. So I'd like to encourage the city and the council to maintain those philosophies and maintain the low density out in that area as much as possible. I know this one has the proposal of R3, but I would call that into question for a couple reasons, because one would be traffic, and you know, the only way in there is through down Rick Road and through Rick Parkway, through our subdivision, and then into what was proposed as a dead-end cul-de-sac, you know, into that subdivision that's being proposed. So that seems to me to be problematic, especially when you look at the comprehensive plan and it talks about how Rick Road is an arterial street with the intention of it to be connected, you know, so for throughput for future. So perhaps it should go through to say Mule Road or somewhere rather than be dead-ended in there to help the traffic. I think there's another big concern that everything beyond Quarry, the corner of Quarry and Rick Road, go through that corner, all of it, and all the new subdivisions that come in. So there's a bigger issue that regardless of this one, how this is resolved, you know, we need to look forward on that for, so that's the traffic issue. And then the gentleman before mentioned about the water, and that's a big concern. And of course, there's going to be a lot of water through there, and they just did Quarry Road, and it did come up too high. So I'll let some other folks talk to you now about those kinds of issues.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Brad Mutza. I live at 1228 Hoffman Estates Drive. Here for the proposed 54 annexation, I encourage you to consider rezoning it from the R3 to the R2. The 40 acres that are already zoned R3 should be considered for the similar reasons that the gentleman right before had suggested as well. It was mentioned in a previous meeting discussion that 54 of the 116 lots exceed the minimum lot size of R2. This is because the topology of the land of those lots are on. Approximately 36 of those lots are sloped too significantly to be any smaller. These lots with significant slope are truly become unusable for backyard usage for the homeowners of those new parcels and those properties. The significant elevation change has been in discussion in the past as well, of more than 170 feet with streets constructed up to 12% grade. This is the maximum allowed within the city for any local city streets. This poses significant safety hazards with the acceleration of automobile traffic going down the hills in this subdivision. According to the current road layout of this subdivision, this would be a significant impact to those residents of that subdivision. As a resident at the bottom of this property, there's currently a significant stormwater drainage concern with the subdivision layout of the lots. On Exhibit D of the proposal that you all have received, lots number 96, 97, 98, and 99 is in the bottom southwest corner of the proposed property. The adjacent property owners, in addition to myself, have continued washout of the current private gravel driveway that is proposed in this emergency ingress and egress. On Exhibit D, you'll find from the top rightmost cul-de-sac to this proposed emergency exit is a straight downhill of 2,750 feet, or approximately 0.52 miles, with an elevation drop of 170 feet. any type of a coasting of a vehicle is accelerating to a safety hazard point. Removal of the stormwater would really be necessary with some sort of a pump lift station near lots number 95 through 100, and pumped water around the Darrell Hoffman property at 1221. That elevation needs to go at least 70 feet and across his property down to the proper stormwater removal, as well as the sewer. I haven't heard any proposal as to how we are removing the water from those lots 96, really 95 through 100.
Can I show pictures, exhibits on the water pressure?
Thank you, sir.
Council member, there is currently a drainage problem from these two parcels, and without proper infrastructure, it will only worsen. As for the transportation and utility impact, the R2 zoning would decrease the trips per day with a fewer but larger lot size. In addition, the trip count that was reported in the previous reports does not account for the Walnut Ridge Phase 1, Phase 2, and additional homes that are in Brellinger. In addition, a concern is the water pressure. Water pressure impact on all of the surrounding residents, subdivisions of Brellinger, Briar Lake, as well as Walnut Ridge. The water pressure going up the slope of 170 feet will surely be an impact and be of significant concern. When this does occur, who's ultimately responsible for fixing this problem? As far as the emergency use access utilizing Hoffman Estates Drive, there's a concern when a developer benefiting from ingress and egress for 116 residential lots has no plans for improvements to the road or bridge. It was mentioned just moments ago about bridge ownership. I don't own that bridge, but I take responsibility of maintaining the private road and the condition of the bridge, making sure that myself and my family can safely cross this bridge. The bridge is not suited in the construction for the proposed usage when an emergency occurs. The bridge decking giving way for fire truck, ambulance, or a vehicle servicing the subdivision could have a life-threatening impact on those in need of their services. In addition, the gravel drive is only a one-car width. According to the concept development plan, that's your Exhibit D, the gravel drive may be partially located on the Wayland property of 1205 Hoffman Estates Drive. In addition, plot number 97 on Exhibit D removes access from a more than 60-year-old driveway, cutting off access to the residents at 1228 Hoffman Estates. There have been no provisions made to remediate this access denial to this homestead. Emergency ingress and egress at the most northwest corner of this proposed development should be established, alleviating the need to cross the bridge that does not meet the requirements for the anticipated emergency traffic. This is found in Exhibit A. Parcel ID 11-030-300-035 is a 2.38 acre parcel. It should be strongly considered for a secondary entry and exit directly onto Ruck Road. If a secondary smaller bridge is needed, that's part of being a developer. I'm concerned about the construction and excavation equipment traffic, how it could significantly jeopardize the stability of the bridge and gravel private road. We haven't necessarily heard how that traffic for development is getting onto the property. Are they waiting until a new bridge is completely completed and built before any excavation equipment is taken over, that steel bridge cannot withstand any type of equipment like that. Has it been determined that the bridge and private road will not be used during development? As for the findings from the previous meetings, this subject property for annexation, it was discussed that the value would be diminished to the current owner. The surrounding subdivision properties value will diminish based on an R3 zoning. The city should be less concerned about a landowner who purchased agriculturally zoned property and more so concerned about the existing neighboring residents. The finding of the city staff believe there is a manageable impact to overall health, safety, and welfare of the community. As I've already discussed, the water pressure concerns, the automotive speed down steep slopes on the streets, the water drainage, the emergency access are all concerned impacts. Hardships to the property owner should not supersede the impact of the existing residents of the subdivisions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Any other? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Doug DeWilde. I live in Briar Lake subdivision. I think you covered a lot of the things I want to cover, but when it comes to watershed, we started off by talking about the recent improvements on Ruck Road and the fact that we had a 3-inch, 4-inch rain over several days. I wouldn't say that's a 100-year flood, but it did flood the road again. The funeral home, actually the road to the funeral home was flooded. The retention pond and the pond themselves covered that road. Somebody here knew about it because there was a city road sign down there for a week that said water on pavement, and there was mud all over the pavement. So taking the watershed issue a little further, it's currently going from Huffman Estates Drive all the way down to where the funeral home is and the bank is, Midland Bank, and we have a current flooding issue. Just a short 2 years ago, in Gadurn, and actually last weekend, the residents of Gadurn couldn't get out because there was 3 to 4 feet of water across their bridge. Actually, a vehicle stalled out in the bridge trying to get out, and fortunately nobody was hurt. And a couple years ago, I've got videos of some of the residents actually kayaking in their backyard because the creek had come up so far they were kayaking in the water in their backyard in Gadurn. So if you have that big of an issue today, and the recent work that's been done wasn't up to 100, or was up to 100-year flood, my concern is if you put 115 homes on that hillside, and we talked about the 12% or further grade, and all the water coming down, that's all going into Palmer Creek. The new subdivision that's going on, and I forget the name, pardon me, Walnut Ridge, that water is going across Quarry into what is a god-awful situation for those people that live right there, because those backyards are a disaster. JLP hasn't finished those, I guess, because there's still water sitting in one of the backyards today. That all goes into the same creek. Last Thursday morning, after we got a rain on Wednesday evening, I drove around and checked some of the bridges. If you continue across Ruck Road and go into town the back way up to Main Street, I don't remember what lake that is in subdivision on the left-hand side, it feeds under the road into the same creek. It was only 2 to 3 feet from the top. And last Wednesday wasn't even that bad of a rain. So my concern is we're already flooding Quarry Road. That situation, if the creek continues to back up, is only going to worsen. And now Ruck Road is potentially flooding going into town. And that's before, and we all know, if you go south of where Brellinger is, there's dead-end roads right now with temporary cul-de-sacs on them. The field between Briar Lakes and ICS is going to be homes at some point in the future, right? We can all see the roads are dead-ended for that reason. I would bet that there's probably 150 homes because that's a big field, That water also all goes to Palmer Creek. So there is a long-term, there's a current short-term situation, but there is a big issue with water drainage. And my question is, who's going to be responsible when homes start being impacted by all that watershed? When you can't get out, if there's an emergency situation and people can't get in and out even to get away? Who's taking responsibility for that? Is the city who approves the plans? Is the developer who's putting the development in? Or who's going to take ultimate responsibility when something happens? You covered all the traffic situations. And the other thing I want to touch on is the welfare of the residents and the homeowners. I thought it was interesting in your letter that we're concerned about the hardship of the owner who's developing the subdivision. The amount of money that was spent to purchase that land, I don't specifically feel sorry for him or his hardships when you're talking about impacting all the residents and everybody else around him with his proposal. So I was kind of shocked, honestly, to see that in there and worrying about his feelings, but hopefully he'll be okay. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dennis Brand. I'm the developer of Brellinger Development and partner of Brellinger. Just learned about this less than 2 weeks ago on a job site. One of the guys out there was telling me about this. I didn't even know all this was going on. So I just was sort of shocked when I learned about it, and I watched the video of the meeting 2 weeks ago. So just give you a little background of it out there. Brellinger always followed the master plan, which that area up there is called Northview, which is supposed to be a large lot development, R2 or R1 zoning, which is the size and the setbacks. The setbacks is just as much important as the size of the lot. Whether you're going to have a tract development with less setbacks on side yards and things. So setbacks wasn't even mentioned in the last meeting what I heard. Could be wrong, but I always referred to the city's master plan and ordinances as the city Bible. That's how I take it. So over the years, to develop Brellinger, I always followed the rules, including dedication of property for improving Rick Road in the future. And we built Rick Parkway through. It's making a grid system. You got Rick Road, you got Rick Parkway, and then we dead-ended 2 streets to some vacant farm ground and to the church's property. We dead-ended our street with the eyebrow asphalt temporary cul-de-sac so people could turn around. We followed the R2 zoning. But even streets to the south was for future street extensions to make a grid system up. Not all these developments are just landlocked and no future for extending any direction. And then following me, our Brellinger's development, we did the original Brellinger in 4 additions, but during that time, Briar Lake Estates developer followed the master plan also. He did R2, the size and setbacks, followed the brick ordinance, and he also, the developer improved Brick Road all the way through there. Adjacent to his property was part of his development costs. So Briar Lake developer followed the master plan completely. Walnut Ridge came along now, and they're following the master plan with all R2. There was word about hooking onto the sewer I guess Brellinger, our lift station, which is almost full capacity now, So I don't know how 116 homes are going to be going into this. So that was one of my concerns. So I'm asking the city to just follow the master plan of the city of Columbia, which include for the developer to improve Rick Road. He's got a lot of adjacent property of Rick Road. And at the last meeting, it was sound like Rick Parkway was the only way to get into this development. His west property line borders Rick Road. It just needs to be improved like Briar Lakes did. The right-of-way is there, and it should be followed. And then for the street extensions, I think you're looking that direction now. You got to have street extensions in the future to the west and the north. They might not go nowhere now, but eventually they probably will get hooked up to Mule Road or east out to, when we say Quarry Road, that's just vacant ground out there. So it could easily be developed, and it'd be nice to have the streets connecting and making a city grid system. I suggest we follow the brick ordinance. I don't know why it has to be any wording about the brick ordinance. We have a 50%, Burlington has a 50% brick requirement, but we still follow the city of Columbia's brick ordinance with that. So I think they should follow that. Instead of the emergency road, I don't know where that, they got all the road, Rick Road access, have another entrance to their development off Rick Road. They have the access there. And like they said earlier, the stormwater coming off that hillside is going to be tremendous. And that's about all I have to say. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Mark Scoggins, and I'm wearing my hat as a resident of Brellinger tonight. I was a little bit surprised to hear from the last meeting that the suggestion that the master plan has been followed, because almost half of these R3 zoned lots meet R2 qualifications concerning size. Now, to me, that suggested that approximately half do not. So that is the reason why the Northview area was, and like I said, Dennis added Briar Lakes, Brellinger. That's why we all are large lot subdivisions. That's why we are all R2, is because the master plan that has been adopted requires large lot subdivisions. It requires low-density housing. No one can sell an R3 as low-density housing. It simply is not. And as Dennis pointed out, it's more than just lot size. It's setback lines too. He referred to tract houses, and I think once if this is approved and this subdivision is approved in its present proposal, there will be a feeling of tract houses, a subdivision with tract houses. So these guys stated what their concerns with much better than I could, but the other point I want to make is that if this is approved, R3, notwithstanding the present master plan, you might as well tear that master plan up, because you can't refuse anybody else that wants to come in and do R3 or worse. You can't, I mean, you either got a master plan or you don't. As Dennis said, he and I, and as a partner in Brellinger, we considered that master plan the Bible, and we always went by the Bible. We never came back and asked for anything other than, how do you want us to do it? So, with all due respect, I request that the plan in its present form be denied, that these lots be required to be large lot subdivisions as the master plan requires, that because they're in the Northview area, that there be low-density housing, and I request that, therefore, that the plan as presented tonight be denied. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir?
Jack William back again.
Yes, sir.
My house sits where there's a culvert comes underneath the present railroad right-of-way, which is going to be on phase 1 of the subdivision. That culvert is 36 inches round, and it runs full. That's just phase 1. There's 2 other ones down farther. From my house, the way it looks, they run even more water. There was a mention of a retention pond between Rick Road and the creek. Well, you go from the right-of-way of Rick Road to the creek, they want to dig that out to get dirt to build a bridge. If they do that, Rick Road's going to be on the drop-off. It's going to be in the creek. I don't know where he's going to build a retention pond. It's been a half-assed development all along. Nobody's come with any information that this is what we're going to do. This is where we're running the water. This is where the sewers are going to be. This is where the streets are going to be. It's just proposed. And they get zoned R3. They can put it any place they want, do it any way they want. But there ought to be a definite proposal before you can vote on anything. How can you vote on anything if you don't even know what you're voting on? And this is what they did at the last meeting. They voted to make it R3 when they didn't know what they was voting on. Scott gave them a lot of information, but oh man, that information was way over our heads. So that's all I got to say.
Sir? Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Susan White, and I think most of the things have been addressed tonight with the water and the traffic issues. The one other concern I had, as a mother of 3 young children, I moved to Columbia because of the wide open spaces, the large lot sizes, for a nice place to raise my family. And I have concerns just with if you put in higher density housing, the schools are getting full here. Columbia, we moved to Columbia from St. Louis for a good education for our kids. And I have a first grader going in, and there's already 6 sections of first grade classrooms. By the time my kids are in high school, if you bring in this much more housing over the coming years, are we going to have space in the education system for all the kids that are coming in? Because it's young families like myself moving in, bringing their kids, because Columbia is a great place to live. So I would just plead that we continue with the idea of R2 or less going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Holman. My husband and I are new to Columbia. We chose our neighborhood because of the big yard. We looked everywhere. And I would just say that I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. If you study Wentzville, I was raised in Wentzville. Everyone who lives there now wishes they could get the heck out because the cart was put before the horse. House on top of house, subdivision on top of subdivision without prior planning. And it takes 25 minutes to go a block on what used to be our main street. Everyone wants out of Wentzville, and I'm afraid that that is what the developers are looking at. Hey, let's be the next Wentzville. Well, please don't. My last comment is that I live right there by that bridge that we're talking about being an emergency exit, and I wouldn't want your fire trucks on that bridge. I don't like to walk on that bridge. You can put your foot through it. So if you haven't driven there, get out of your car and try to walk across it. And don't dream about putting a fire truck on it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sorry for my attire. I just came from the Columbia Sportsman's Club meeting, so I apologize and not having notes. I really wasn't planning on speaking because I didn't think I'd be here in time. My name is Bob Posnick. I live in Bellinger also. The only issue that I haven't noticed or brought up is the publication scenario. From what I could tell, from what I hear, people were not informed. And when I read Mark's letter and then read your agenda and all the items in it, I got educated on what was going on, and I read in there. I also read the fact that the Planning Commission published in the Republic Times, and there was a meeting and there was no public comment. Okay. When I heard that, I go, oh, what's going on? So I looked back at that issue, and I read that issue. And in my opinion, unless you're a civil engineer that went to Rolla, you don't have a clue what that is about, in my opinion. And the reason why I say my opinion, in my line of work, and I've been doing this for 40 years almost, I review publication notices. And what I look for is completeness, accuracy, timeliness, and clarity. The first three are debatable, and I can't argue with any of that. Clarity, though, you need to be able to make sure that the people behind me know what's going on, that this is happening. Having said that, also I want to say, in my prior life when we lived in South County, if there was any kind of development that was done, not only was it published, but there were physical signs all throughout adjacent areas. I don't recall seeing it. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. I don't know. But if it didn't happen, considering how the narrative is in the publication, people need to know what's going on, the time, the date, a general idea of what's going on there, and so forth. So that is just my comment, is just going forward, there has to be a better way for whomever to let the public know what's going on in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Bruce Hoffman. I live at 1220 Hoffman Estates. I grew up on that farm. We moved to Columbia in 1963 when the population was 1,800 people. Most of the businesses spoke German. We had party lines. Your party lines, everybody spoke German. I've watched this town develop over all these years. I served on the Columbia Police Officer, as a Columbia Police Officer for many, many years. I put 42 years into law enforcement. When we sold that property, it was my mom and dad's. My dad passed, my mom then passed, then I had to sell the property to equally split it between my brother. My understanding and agreement in selling that property was that the road easement was strictly to be given so that they would have access to go up and survey the property, do soil samples, et cetera, before there was developing it. It was never asked if they could use it as a permanent entrance or exit. That road has never been developed to handle the kind of traffic that they want to put on it. That bridge never was built to hold that kind of traffic that they want to put on it. If that property is developed, they need to have two entrances and exits to that property. New entrance and exits to that property. In an emergency situation, none of us would have a problem if somebody used that roadway. But only an emergency situation. Whenever we sold that property, I would have loved to keep it. I didn't even advertise that property. I didn't want a major developer coming in and buying that property. Vince, that owned the property between my cousin and Vince Goody, asked about the property and wanted to purchase the property. Ideal situation. He owns that 40 acres, whatever's there. He can purchase mine, have the combination of the land. At the time, I was never told that he was going to buy it and sell it to a developer. No sooner the papers were signed, the developer took charge. I understand that it's causing a lot of problems, and for that I apologize. I hope this can be all worked out. I would not like to see the Zone 3 development in there. That property isn't big enough to put in that many houses on a Zone 3. We love it there. I took Dennis Brand up on the hill overlooking his development when he was developing that, and he goes, "Oh, Bruce, if you ever develop this, please let me have a shot. This is beautiful. You can see the JB Bridge. Back on the other side, you can see Clayton. I mean, it's a beautiful view up there." As things have developed, this is where we're at. I would hate to see that turn into a Zone 3. The houses that Dennis has built are beautiful homes. I would be proud to say that property was mine, that they built those beautiful homes on. But if you go to a Zone 3, we'll probably sell and move. Lived there all my life. So you have a lot to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Devin Dalpaz. I live in the cul-de-sac on the right-hand side. The Brellinger's cul-de-sac on the right-hand side of the road kind of backs up to this property we're talking about. My main concern is in that cul-de-sac, we have lots of small children over there. We're increasing traffic now. I mean, a lot of kids from the neighborhood travel to that cul-de-sac across Rook Parkway to come play, and the traffic right now is people come speeding through there all the time now. So please take that into consideration also when we're talking about the number of cars and everything we're increasing on the way in, so as a public safety. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
On vacation.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Pete Hoydel, live in Brellinger as well, 1552, right across the way there from the Dalpaws. And I have two little ones. It's safety, you know. I mean, all these everybody's hitting the big ones here, and major concerns with all that. But I have a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, kids running all over the place, and Parkway becoming the main way in to this development. That's scary. And just like someone just said, I mean, it's on my mind. I mean, not that it matters to anybody else in here, but yeah, I'm thinking might be time to go. But you know, it kind of gets emotional because my wife's from Waterloo. Got family in the area. You know, I got a business in Waterloo. Yeah, and I haven't been here as long as everybody has a lot more roots than me in this area, but it's kind of sad. So appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Kerniger. I live in Briar Lake Estates. My house is at, the back of it is at the corner of Rook Road and Hoffman Estates, right there, that backyard. The biggest thing that I see is that the runoff water coming down that hill, going into Palmer Creek. I've seen that creek full many times right now, the way it is. Right now, it's all agriculture in there, so you have some watershed that is naturally on that hillside when the plants, when the wheat is in there, or corn is in there, soybeans, whatever it is. But I've seen that creek overflow many times. It comes back up in the back of my yard. When it does that, I know that Quarry Road is already flooded. It just happens. So you're gonna put 116 houses up there on a hill that's 173 feet right above me, and you're gonna run off all that water from their roofs, their driveways, the road, and everything right on down into that creek. By the time you have a 1-inch rain, all that water is gonna run into that creek almost instantly. That's gonna flood the back of my yard. It may flood my house. I'm just letting you know right now, unless something's done with the Carr Creek, it's gonna, Palmer Creek, I'm sorry. Unless something's done with that, it's gonna continue to get worse and worse as it goes. You're also gonna have Walnut Ridge that's gonna add into that, like was mentioned before. I don't know if Corps of Engineers have to get involved before anything can be done with Palmer Creek. I don't know if the EPA, because they have jurisdiction on some of the creeks with runoff water. That's one of the concerns, is that if you clean it out, you know, do you have to get the Corps of Engineers, you have to get EPA, who do you have to get involved before you can clean that whole creek out all the way? It should be all the way to the Mississippi to make sure that it flows out. The other thing that I have is, there was a mention before about there's a 12-inch water line that comes in from off of Mule Road, I believe it is, and then it goes down to an 8-inch line somewhere close by my back of my house, somewhere back there. You have to pump that water up 173 feet. The other side of that is sewer lines. I haven't heard anybody say anything about the sewer lines being able to handle, except for their lift station right now is running almost at 100%. So at 7 o'clock in the a.m. in the morning, you have everybody getting out of bed, they go to the bathroom, they take a shower, all that sewer comes down at one time. I hope my sewer doesn't back up in my house. That's what I got.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other input that hasn't been brought forth yet? Okay.
He said the water runs into Mississippi. I just wanted to remind you, it does not go into the Mississippi River. It's pumped into the Mississippi River out of Fish Lake.
Yes, sir. Is there other public comments? We'll ask the city council. You guys would like to have any comments?
My biggest concern, and it was brought up at least 2-3 times, is, you know, we do have this master plan in place, and why we aren't following it is, you know, my biggest issue with, you know, considering a development like this. Everything in that Northview area, according to that plan, is supposed to be low density R1, R2, and obviously this proposal is not, and that's my biggest issue.
Thanks, sir.
Mayor, I'd like to point out, actually, this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The 40 acres, the 40 acres that are already in city limits are specifically named in the comprehensive plan as being an exception to the low-density development requirement. It specifically says that under the Northview, that those 40 acres are. That doesn't address the other acres, but I just wanted to point out that that is specifically in there, and it just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to have a subdivision that was split between two zoning districts. Because that it was zoned R3 at the time it was annexed, we can't require him to zone it any different, and he can submit a plan for R3 development that we're obligated to approve by law if that happens. Just pointing out that this is this is a very similar situation as we dealt with the Country Crossings 2, in that, yeah, there are impacts that need to be mitigated. And I'm trying to steer with the mitigation through what we can require through the annexation agreement so that we have a tool to address these issues, and that's the reason why some of these have been addressed. He has a right to develop at R3 density for the 40 acres that are already in city limit. The other thing I'll point out for you too, just to make sure everybody understands, a lot of the questions that are being asked are not answerable at this stage in the game, and nor are they ever at this stage in the game. This is the first stage where they've identified a piece of property, you get it annexed first, and then you get it zoned the way you want it. The design is the next phase. So a lot of the issues that have been raised, that's what the developer will be required to address by meeting our subdivision codes. The drainage concerns that have been raised, which I might point out too, the common ground area in between existing Rook Road and the creek, that is reserved for the stormwater work, storage that needs to be done. So what that quantity and what that calculation is, we don't know. We're not there yet. What we're tasked with doing is not determining the subdivision design, just ensuring that the general layout is acceptable to council and that it meets the requested R3 zoning requirements, which it does. So that design stuff those issues will be addressed should council decide to move forward. I will, if you'd allow me to, I just wanted to point out a couple of factual things that there may have been for clarification purposes. First off, the developer was made aware of the water pressure. He will, if he moves forward, he's going to have to address that situation to make sure there's plenty of pressure for everyone. The sewer line that will be tied into is at it's basically at the south corner where Rook Road makes the hard left, well, depending on which direction, from east-west to north-south, yeah. That turn there, yeah, that's the one that the sanitary sewer will go into there, not through the one that goes through Browninger. So just wanted to point that out too. Legal requirements, I share the frustration with the legal notice, but when you have 3 pages of legal description on a property, yeah, that gets a little dry and boring. But we did satisfy the statutory and codified legal requirements for notification. Notices are only published for annexations and zoning. They're not mailed out. And we don't post signs. It's not part of the code. I mean, I don't have any problem doing it. We've done that every place else I've ever worked. And I will, if that's something that the council would like to see happen when we update the zoning code, absolutely. Let's do it. The more people we get informed of things, the better decisions you can make as well. Let's see, I wanted to clarify the access easement. They're just showing the easement that they have. Somebody mentioned that it would cut off somebody, and I just wanted to point out that's not cutting anybody off or building anything. They already have that easement for their property. They're just saying that would be used under emergency purposes. That's the route. It's not any construction that doesn't put anything new in place or stop anybody from doing anything. They already have that easement. So that just covers what their route out and in would be. So I just wanted to point that out to make sure everybody was aware of that. And the only other thing that the findings, I wanted to point out that the headings on the finding are specific categories that the Illinois Supreme Court has said, these are the criterias you should review, at least these. So I make sure that we always put a finding in that cover each of those topics, so that way we cover our legal basis in terms of findings, should we ever be challenged on that. They're not, it's not on anybody's, they're not written for anybody's benefit. It's just it's written in a way that's intended to make the case whether or not the facts of the case or the application meet that specific topic, as far as the sorts of things that you're supposed to rule on and make your decisions based upon. So I think that's the big things that I heard that I thought should be pointed out so everybody was aware of. And once again, if you have any questions, I'll stay on call.
Alderman Martins.
Just a question on the parcels that aren't, that they want to annex in. Why R3 and not an R2? Do we have a choice of saying, well, if you want to annex it in, we'll let you annex in at R2?
You could, sure. They could be separate actions. You could do an annexation to be zoned later, and it would just default to, let's see, that would be, I guess R1 would be the default under state statute, which would be the lowest.
They want those.
The most restrictive residential zone.
But there are three parcels that are going to be brought in, and they're under agriculture right now, or what?
Yes. Well, they're not annexed. They're zoned St. Clair County agricultural.
Okay.
Yes. Those two parcels that wrap around. That's on the
And they'd like
backside.
us to put it at R3.
Yes, to be consistent with what is already in, yes.
How many acres is that? How many acres are those three?
54 acres
Okay.
is,
So more, okay.
is outside, correct. So, yes, and we're entertaining R3 is because that's what they've requested. That's what they've applied for, so that's what we have to entertain. If you want to tell them, we're not going to approve R3 on the annexed portion, that's up to you.
Mr. Donahue, do you know when the previous annexation was agreed upon? That's already zoned R3?
I looked for it. I could not find the ordinance for it. However, it predates, it's on the zoning map going as back to 1999. And what I suspect happened, it probably happened, there's about, quite a period of time where we don't have any ordinances listed. And I don't know if that was during a change of clerks or what happened, but there's no ordinances covering a range of about 2,000 ordinance numbers.
Yeah.
So it's got to be in there somewhere, because that only goes back as far as 97. And like I said, it was on the zoning maps going back as far as 99.
Okay, thank you. Any other from Alderman? Discussion? Alderman Holcamp?
I think we're onto something with the sizes. It seems like there's more ground that should be R2 than there should be R3, 54 versus 40. So I understand they asked for it and we need to entertain it. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying I would probably entertain the opposite, to have R2 on the 54. And I don't know if that annexation agreement has expired. I know this one has a 20-year term. If it did expire, since it was 99, would that zoning be able to be changed to an R2?
No, whatever was approved stays in place.
Or if they did want approval for the 54 acres at R2, then they could change the zoning on your R3 if it was their choice.
They could do that, correct.
Okay, okay. I would like to consider that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other from the council? Yes. Alderman Garmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I drove that back there, and I like to think I got vision, right? So I'm looking at that hill, and I'm thinking, wow, okay, tear all that down. And I'm looking at the plan here, and I tend to agree. I think there should probably be another entrance. I was really not comfortable with that emergency entrance. You know, after driving that, I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, I'm not a developer, so. but it just seems like it's not substantial enough, and it seems like a whole lot of traffic also, as well, pouring out of that one ingress egress point. I mean, that's a lot of houses. So,
Yeah. I mean, Ruck Road's got a capacity of 15 to 20,000 vehicles per day. I'm just telling you what the design capacity was. That's just simple a fact.
Any other questions? Okay.
When was the MSA or the master agreement, when was that founded?
2005.
2005, so those 40 were done before the agreement. So back to your point, I mean, at least making a change to R2 now, you're still following the master agreement.
We're following it anyway because it specifically says the 40 acres
Yeah.
is exempted from the low density requirement, yeah. It does not. We couldn't find an annexation agreement on that, by the way. It would have been with the ordinance if there was one. There may not have been one because there was no improvements to the road. Nothing was ever developed there, so there may not have been an annexation agreement. Not every annexation has an agreement that goes with it.
Yep. Yes, sir?
I moved there, I've been out there 27 years, and Vince bought that just after I did out there. So what you're saying is, once it's zoned, it can never be changed again? So if Vince owned it then and he sold it to the developers and developed that, shouldn't that have been rezoned or at least a hearing or something whenever that got sold or transferred over?
Let me clarify, we cannot make them rezone it. He has rights to develop it at R3 because that's what he purchased it at. We just can't make him change that, though. It's zoned R3. Now, if you're referencing a different property, that, let me know. I'm referencing the approximately 40 acres that is in city limits, previously annexed, and is zoned R3. Is that the?
Right now, I live right in the middle of that. They've got me on 3 sides, and looking through Pan there, I've got 9 houses gonna be butting up against my 3 acres. That's packed in there, consider that too, if you wanna live there.
All right. If you could step to the mic and state your name, please.
My name is Nancy Fredenberg. I live in Bellinger as well. You are our Director of Development. Do you live in Columbia or Monroe County?
No.
So you don't have any skin in the game.
Yes.
I think going forward, that we need to make sure that when we hire a Director of Development, that they have skin in the game and that they at least live in Monroe County or in Columbia. Because right now, I feel we're being sold by a snake oil salesman.
The individuals that are making the determination are all elected officials from the
That's kind of
community.
a call for.
We're gonna
Change a few minds.
public
wouldn't you call it
comments.
like that?
We're gonna stop the public comments at
Yeah,
this time.
really.
We can't have that.
Totally uncalled for.
Was that an 8-inch, Chris, or a 12-inch? The sewer line they'll be connecting to?
There's an 8-inch that turns into a 10-inch right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually gets larger closer to the treatment.
What is an 8-inch supposed to handle? You know how many houses an 8-inch is supposed to handle?
I think at a minimum slope, it can handle like 300 gallons a minute, which is probably close to 1,000 homes.
Right.
And I'm sure the slopes are probably different, but it's an 8-inch that turns into a 10-inch, it turns into a 12-inch, ends up being an 18 to 24 by the time it gets to the pump station and pump it into the unit. We're not tying into things and stuff. No, it's not, and it's not.
Yes. Can you state your name, please?
My name is Linda Lloyd, and we live at 2 Oval Ridgeway
Okay.
in Bellinger. I noticed that there are a lot of variances to this property, some that really concern me, like the cul-de-sac length, and this is directed to the, I'm sorry, sir, I forgot your name.
Mr. Donachie?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm concerned about the cul-de-sac length at 500 feet. I mean, 500 feet. We have a variance on that, and I don't clearly understand why. It's because you're adding more homes in a smaller area. And you also have a variance of 1,300 block length. So what's happening here is we're making it unsafe for those people to live there who, in case there is a fire or something, will not have the ability to get, this is how I'm hearing this, because see, we're not from here. We moved here a year and a half ago from New Jersey, where we had 3 beautiful acres we lived on. We loved every minute of it. Our codes were very strict, and I think you mentioned it at the last one. There were no variances unless it was absolutely necessary. Just like you talked to that person with the fence, or screened-in porch, sorry. So when I came here, we looked at over 150 homes in St. Louis. That is no lie. We picked it here because it was closer to what we loved, where we lived in New Jersey. Quiet, on a hill, nice neighbors, they took care of us, we leave our doors unlocked, like we did in New Jersey. Nobody believes this, but we did. We were in southern New Jersey, where it's a garden state down there. It is, we picked cherries too. So anyway, you know, this really, it's amazing to me that we don't have a plan. When you have a plan in other states, not only there, but in Nebraska and all the other places we live, when you have a development of this size and magnitude, you have got to think of every detail that could possibly happen up front. So we're not in court, the community's not in court because we screwed up someplace. And that bothers me. And I would never want to be one of those people on, what's the name of that road? Brook Road? Where you're backing up, these beautiful homes are backing up to this street. They have children. I see them all the time. We don't have any kids. I see them all the time. I'm very careful. Who the heck's going to be driving down that street from that subdivision and some little kid walks out? It scares me to death. And you guys have got to think about the details. That's what we're here for, to develop a community that's like other people. And we are zoned R2, and I'm sorry, sir, but that's what we're zoned. And that's what we should be developing in this market. A community that cares about one another, that doesn't worry about the almighty dollar, that worries about the people that live there. Sorry, that was an emotional response. But that's how I feel about this whole thing. I don't think anybody should have allowed any variances for that property, none, as we did for the guy who wanted the screened-in porch. And as far as the traffic's concerned, who's gonna put in the crosswalks for the kids? Who's gonna put in the lights? Why can't we just do a traffic study and really look at this thing before we decide on what we're doing? It all means something. It all means something to the people that live here. And the reason we moved here. Sorry, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir, last question. Comment?
I asked a ignorance here. When the lots, 40 lots that are currently at R3, when that was purchased, was there a public hearing for that? Is there a public hearing for that? When somebody buys it agricultural and rezones it to R3? Is
Yes. Well, according to city code, yeah, there's a public hearing.
So then my point is, sir, what I read for a living is boring and, bland. What I'm trying to say about my issue is the fact that community needs to be told what's going on. I understand it to some degree, but when you read that notice, nobody has a clue. In this room, I would just bet 90% of the people had no idea of this. So that's my point. It's not because it's bland or boring. It's because people, John Q. Public people, don't understand what's being published. And not everybody gets the Republic Times.
Thank you. All right. Council have any further discussion on this matter?
I think it's something that we've heard the conversations tonight, that Mr. Deineke and I will work to try to see if we can come up with something that would be addressing these concerns that the council's voiced.
Okay. Thank you, guys, for your input. We will take all your input and your recommendations.
What are the next steps for you in this process?
So the council will need to vote on the annexation agreement as presented.
Not necessarily, Mayor. We could,
What I was referring to is that Mr. Deineke and I, we would work to try to incorporate some of the feedback that we've received this evening, and we'll bring a draft back for further discussion at the next meeting.
Okay.
Are we going to be invited to these further discussions?
Yes.
Are we going to be notified other than
You can't do
like
that.
newspaper? I mean,
You have to be
nobody gets
informed.
the Republic Times.
The website has everything on it.
Who's got a computer? I don't have a computer. I'm not on the internet.
Well, I'm
The
sorry.
agendas are posted on the front of City Hall in compliance with the Open Meetings
Notices
Act.
are on the building.
So everybody's got to pop through City Hall. Pardon?
I don't know what you expect.
Yeah, I don't know what we could.
We try to.
Will decisions be made before next month's city council meeting?
No, the
No.
decisions can only be made at a city council meeting.
No. The next city council is July 19th.
And this is something that will be decided in a public forum, not in a closed forum?
No public.
Public.
Always public.
Probably?
Public.
Always.
Always public.
Always
Yes.
public.
Okay.
Yes.
Get your notice.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
When is the agenda normally published for the next month's meeting?
The Friday preceding the meeting date.
And
Correct.
that would be included, that this would be either.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Presented or voted on?
That is
Correct.
correct. That is correct. All right. Thank you. All right. Next item up for discussion is new business. We will, we can get a motion to approve special events permit for Historic Main Street Columbia Taste of Columbia, which is August 7th, 2021.
Mayor, if I might, real quick, this is when Alderman Nemitz asked earlier about the Taste of Columbia. This was what I was referencing. We felt that because it was an extended closure from, requested from 11:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., that it warranted having that's Main Street being closed on a Saturday for that length of time. We felt that warranted some council consideration and discussion before just moving forward with it.
Council have any discussions on Taste of Columbia?
Hey, Scott, what was the reasoning on that again? Was it the heat of the day? I forget what.
Yeah, essentially, so they had it last in 2019, and the explanation we were given is because it was really oppressive in the middle of the heat in the middle of the day for the vendors, that they had requested maybe some evening or I don't believe they had vending as early as 8:30 or.
Right.
So they changed it basically, number one, to accommodate the vendor, and number two, so that they could try to have a band to attract a larger crowd.
Right. So the initial time slot was like 9.5 hours, and now it's 11.
8:30 to 6 p.m.,
9.5.
8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m.
And now it's 11 and a half. 11.
Yeah, yeah.
Alderman Nemitz, did you have something?
Just that what I said before was, I don't know if there was information available from last year, or not last year, of course, it was
There was no
canceled, but
last
2
year.
years ago, with regard to, I know it's a 2-week notice, it's stated in there for the businesses, but I'm just wondering if that isn't something that should be talked. I mean, Historic Main Street, that could be their responsibility to talk to those businesses this is between Cherry and Oak, correct? No, East Legion.
Yes, Legion.
Cherry and East Legion. So within those blocks, if they would specifically talk to those businesses and see, many of them will look at it as an enhancement to bring people in that maybe have never visited before, so it could be very positive and very much a plus.
Agreed.
But if it creates hardship for some of them, I think that's also something that we should take into consideration when the hours are being set, and the fact that those blocks will be closed.
If you want to, specify notification other than, just what they put in there, the 2 weeks prior. If you'd
then
like to
it's too late.
specify
Everything's-
something more specific in your motion, that can be required as well. This isn't new this is new business rather. But I can, sorry, we do so many of these. I can discuss that with Ms. Yocum and see what she had planned. And we can approve this at the next meeting under unfinished, so we can discuss that if you'd like. And
Do we need to
make
officially
sure.
table it? We don't.
No,
because it's
no,
new-
this is
it's
just,
new.
this is discussion only.
Okay.
Since we were going
I
to.
think that would be helpful, just to make sure that it's not moving in the wrong direction, and then 2 weeks before, we have objections that we weren't aware of, and it would be better to deal with it now and make sure that it's agreeable. And then that way, when the time comes, everybody can look forward to it.
So you're saying she should get some feedback from the businesses before it's
Possible to
approved?
contact them? I mean, it is what, 4 blocks? It's not that, it's
We
not
know
that-
Andrea didn't already do that, because she's pretty good.
Well, her membership knows about it at least, which would be most of them.
Yes.
But I don't know how attentive all of the business owners are to her emails and whatnot.
And I don't have a problem with it. I think that, it's done in many communities as far as squares and a few blocks of Main and for various festivals and activities. But I just thought maybe if they haven't already, and they may have already done it.
I'll have a conversation
Because if
with.
there's not a rush, if this doesn't put them in a bind, the date's set, I know, maybe the exact hours aren't, but if we could do that.
I will
Mr. Brady,
discuss
do
that
you
with
think
Ms.
that would
Yocum.
be a holdup
Don't see
for
an issue
them
with
as
that, no.
far as this? It's August the 7th, correct?
No, we would be able to approve it on the
19th?
19th.
Rather than backtrack, I thought maybe it might be prudent to do that.
All right, I'll have a conversation with Ms. Yocum and make sure there's a reasonable plan of action lined out for that. And I will let you know what that is when we bring it back for approval.
Is that agreeable to everyone
Yeah.
else? Do you?
Because like I was saying,
out
it's
of
11
fairness
hours
for,
as opposed to 9, and it's
the-
later in the day now.
The
so
number of hours too,
they-
maybe a little bit of a.
I would imagine Andrea reached out to them, because like I said, she's
would
pretty
think
good.
so, too.
But it'd be good to find out, what did she do?
Right, and I was just going to say, just out of fairness for Main Street, are there any other significant concerns, just so there isn't a delay or anything of that nature?
Well, you have it lined out, and it's been sent to the police, fire, to all the departments for
Yeah.
approval, and that's all good.
Yeah.
Our normal special event application permit, it's been fulfilled. That was just the closure and the hours, were maybe 2 things that were a little bit different, and I wondered if we shouldn't maybe have a bit more information. And I could have asked about it prior to the meeting, but I didn't go through all this until Sunday.
I think if you reduce the time frame, the length of time you close it, it'll have to come off the early hours because I believe she's got the band locked in later.
Okay, things like that.
And that's what's different with this event this time around, right? The band.
That's
City Hall parking lot.
That's one of the big differences.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's no liquor permit associated with that, is what I saw.
Not that I'm aware of. The idea is that you're coming to town to sample our businesses
Oh, to
Exactly.
and promote the local businesses.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
This item will be back up for discussion on.
For approval, we'll have it up for
approval.
approval contingent upon the proper notification and feedback.
Okay. Next item for new business. Motion to approve a construction engineering agreement with Oates and Associates for Quarry Road projects.
Yeah, even though the upcoming Quarry Road projects for Phase 2 and the roundabout most likely will not happen until next spring, summer, we would like to go ahead and get the construction engineering agreement with Oates put in place, because as we go through right-of-way negotiations and utility relocations, there may be a desire to have the right-of-way or something staked, and so therefore we'd like to have an agreement in place as we go through that process.
Questions? Can we get a motion to approve the construction engineering agreement with Osen Associates for Quarry Road?
I will make that motion to approve motion K2.
Second.
Mr. Holcamp, roll call.
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Ook, Holdcamp,
Yes.
Martins. Yes. Riddle. Yes. Garmer.
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Next item is a discussion of a request for annexation, Bluffside Road. Mr. Brim?
As noted in the agenda packet, Mayor Hill and I have been contacted by Ralph Walbacher, who owns a 10-acre parcel off Bluffside Road regarding connection to city utilities. He is currently building a new single-family residence on that property and is interested in obtaining city utilities to serve his new dwelling. Mr. Walbacher has been informed of the annexation requirements imposed by Chapter 13.02 of the City Code. And as such, Mr. Walbacher would be required to annex the remaining 6.79, give or take, acres into Columbia's corporate limits under the provisions of that particular section of the City Code. In consideration of the outlay that Mr. Walbacher states that he will incur as a result of extending the water and sewer utilities to his property, he is requesting the city waive the associated tap fees. The applicable sanitary sewer connection fee is $2,474. The applicable water connection fee is $2,084. It's something that there is no precedent for this. However, it is something that we did inform Mr. Walbacher we would bring it to the council for consideration.
Any discussion, comments, questions on this discussion? Alderman Nemitz?
You say there's been no precedent for this. I mean, I can't make a determination on, I don't know if it's reasonable or not. I do know that that is the karst area. I do know that if we can have city lines in there, that is certainly preferable to having other, their separate system. But again, on those two mounts, I don't know, I don't really understand, I guess, his cost, and I'm not sure if those amounts, if that's something that I don't remember doing it
Right.
in the past.
And it's something that, you really can't find an answer unless you ask. So kudos to him for asking at least.
Yeah, so, again, I see the importance for doing this. I think it would be preferable as is he totally surrounded?
No, he is not. He is just south of the large tract owned by the Ritter Trust, I believe.
Yeah, he's got, but the Ritter is really the governing
Right.
parcel there, because you've got Erder Lane up there that's within the Schneider property, and then you have the
Heritage
have the
Heights
other
to
properties behind the American Legion.
southwest.
So, I
Right.
mean, it's not completely, but it would surely be preferable, I think, for the city to have him on the city utilities. But again, I don't ever remember doing this in the past.
It would be something that, in very brief conversations with Mr. Smith, the actual impact of his property connecting to the city utility system is going to be pretty negligible. Just two occupants of the house, therefore the impact, I think with the associated utility fees, as well as the property taxes that would be generated, would more than offset.
Could the property be subdivided in the future?
It could.
Yeah, then, I don't know.
It would to answer that concern, though, I think I know where you're going with that line of questioning. It would be something that the service lines that Mr. Weilbacher is proposing to install on his property would have to be majorly upsized to serve any additional development on that property. Right, Chris, is that kind of your understanding of it?
Yeah, I mean, if they would go to subdivide it, they're gonna have to bring in sewer and water mains,
Yes.
and install. They couldn't use this infrastructure there. It's just a unique parcel, it's 10 acres. We have, our, I guess in 2017, an ordinance was passed that said, hey, if you want city services, you gotta annex, and, which is great, but from these large parcels that abut the city, it makes it a little bit more challenging, I guess, for them to get water and sewer service. So he just asked if we would waive, and I mean, I don't think it's been done, to answer your question, not since I've been here. Of course, we've only had this rule enacted since 2017, so. And a lot of people who end up getting city services that may not be contiguous, you know, they sign a utility service agreement basically stating if they become contiguous, they must annex, is how we've been handling it. This is one of the first ones where the actual person doing this butts up, actually half the property is already in, don't ask why, but half the property is already in city limits and half isn't. And so,
But this same situation could arise multiple times in the future with we've got many different areas that are being surrounded that are eventually probably going to be, well, they will be annexed.
yes.
So I just think it'll come up, again, it's newer legislation, 2017, it'll probably come up again and again in the future.
Yeah, I think we've only had maybe 3 requests since 2017. But yeah, as there's not available lots and things of that nature, some of these outlying parcels do become valuable for someone to purchase and build a home.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Next item is,
If I may, Mr. Mayor, is there any willingness of the council to consider that, or do we just enforce the tap fees as implemented?
I'd treat it like any other lot, my personal opinion.
All right.
okay, next item is discussion of a proposed extension of city sanitary sewer infrastructure. Mr. Hoffman, you might want to, you're going to be blinded if you.
Or get your sunglasses out, one or the other.
Did we want to turn off one set of the lights? I was going to do it, Kelly.
It's gonna be our nerves. Run both if it's possible.
Thank you.
We want to get 2 TVs and put them on either side and then one, like kind of above the box. Let's see it.
What do I hit, Scott? The up, down, or?
Both sides of the table.
Let's,
Just let everybody speak.
cut them off.
Okay. We want to introduce tonight kind of a proposed sanitary sewer extension project, and I promise, Dennis, it's not in your area. It's south side of town. It's nowhere near. It might even be a different zip code. As some of you may or may not remember, there's a demand for development east of town. You know, the north is kind of as closing up. The next step is kind of to the east. One of the things that's kind of prohibiting development is the lack of public sewers. And again, it's karst areas and things of that nature. You know, years ago, maybe Mary Ellen's on it remembers the infamous Manhole 4. The city had promised, or city has worked to get sewer into this area, but for a variety of reasons, some of it regulatory, it didn't happen. And it's kind of been a roadblock since then to even entertain the idea of developing anything to the east, which the majority is all R2. Just to throw that out there. But, I'll be here all night, it seems. But so what we're proposing, and if you guys can see, again, like it says here, you know, there's demand for development, the area is underserved, there's karst topography, as far as protecting groundwater from an environmental standpoint. And the biggest limitation is that you no longer can fully gravity the system to get into our existing system. There's going to have to be a substantial pump station or lift station, which has a significant cost. And you've got pockets of individuals who own property, and it's with the history of it, we just have felt that maybe this is something we may need to look into to maybe help kickstart the growth for the next 15, 20 years in that area. And as you can see, there's potential development and I apologize, Scott put some of this together, so I'm learning as I go here. Some of the red areas are some residential areas that could be developed. That blue area out there is actually the school property, which we don't know exactly, but this could all this could be served by the system the city put in that goes down Gall Road. It's just a matter of how do you get there, because again, gravity is not an option, again, due to a variety of reasons. And what we're maybe suggesting, if the city would, and Scott will get into maybe how this thing gets paid for, but maybe what we're suggesting, maybe we maybe entertain, is what you see in green, I don't know if you guys can see it, in green and light blue, essentially trying to get the sewer system back into the area on Centerville Road where this infamous manhole 4 was going to serve, okay? But like I said, in order to do that, a significant lift station would need to be placed. And some of the estimates that we've been working with, it could cost as much as $550,000, okay? And as you see, it would extend other areas then, because basically it would create possible drainage in 3 different watersheds, okay, which I guess could either more than likely be extended by a said developer, or if there's some sort of other mechanisms that Scott may talk about here shortly. Is this you?
Yeah. So what we did, we took a look at what it would take to recover the costs. And so I wanted to go over how we came up with this. So what I did is we identified the undeveloped property in the project service area. A number of these, if not the majority of that, we've had at least a preliminary discussion regarding development. One actually has an approved subdivision that just couldn't get served with sewer at the time. That was what, 15 lots, I think, in there, in the middle of Pioneer Ridge there. And then the other, the 55.6 acres. Can you see my cursor up there? I don't know if they can. Does that show up? Okay. This area here, that's also next to Pioneer Ridge, owned by the same family. For an extension there, this is where that infamous manhole 4 would be. Here's the Land of Lincoln property. And this is Walbacher's farm. This is Timber Rock here, the old golf course that has already had an annexation agreement approved. So that's on hold. So we identified all these undeveloped properties in what would be the service area. And what I did was take a look then, that was the starting point. I looked at only developed properties inside the city that are zoned for residential development, R2, R3, R4, and R5, okay? And I identified the number of developed, I did a GIS analysis on it, and pulled up all the lots and identified all of the developed lots, so part of a developed subdivision. I did not include Walnut Ridge, that's under development. I did not include some other properties that are vacant but zoned and in place. Only developed. And what I did, I backed into the calculation then, well, how many lots per acre do we actually get from a development at the various zoning scenarios? And I used that average to calculate what the projected density in these areas would be based on different zoning scenarios. And then the cost recovery baseline is at the tap fee of $24.74 for sewer. So if we take a look at the development density, what we've got in the R2 zoning district, it's minimum lot size of 25,000 square feet. We have 348 developed lots that occupy 508.5 acres. That's about 0.68 lots per acre, okay? That's how many lots per acre we get in R2 development on average. And this includes, now remember, a development includes your streets, your common ground for your drainage area, all of that, because that's what it takes to serve development. So that really gives us a truer picture of what development might look like than using a 25,000 square foot number, which would give you an unrealistic, because you're not even accounting for, well, so that's two lots per acre is allowed, but we actually only get 0.68 acre once you factor in all the rest of the area that's required. So at R3, with a minimum lot size of 16,000 square feet, that is our most acreage occupied, but it's 804 lots, which that comes out to about 0.84 lots per acre. Then we have R4 with a minimum lot size of 10,500. We have 319 lots that take up 226.4 acres. That's an average of 1.4 acres per lot, or lots per acre, sorry. And then in R5, with a minimum lot size of 8,500, we have 1,359 lots, and right at 800 acres for 1.7 acres per lot. So lots per acre, I did it again. So this is the basis of the cost recovery. So did I skip a page? Okay. So the cost recovery, this is the base scenarios. So this is assuming at that same density that I just talked about. So for R2, that 0.668 lots per acre, R3 is 0.84, R4 1.4, and R5 1.7. So that would yield 367 lots. And that's a total of 908,000 and some change in total tap fees. So in order to fully recover the cost based on just our tap fee, we would break even at 61% build out. At R3, we've got 434 lots projected, or that would, if and keep in mind, this assumes the whole thing done at the same zoning district with the basic density. Obviously, there's probably going to be a little bit of interplay. This is just to give you a good solid idea where the numbers are in terms of payback.
It also assumes our current tap-in fees as well. That
Correct.
doesn't incorporate any future increases.
Yes. So with R4 zoning at 367 lots density, that would be 1 2/3 million in total tap fees. Break even at 33% build out. Oops, I skipped R3. Sorry about that. Just over $1 million in total taps fees with break even at 51% build out. And then at R5, once again, well, I forgot to update that density in there when I copied and pasted. I apologize. I'll see the total number of lots on the next page. At any rate, because the lots remain the same. So let's see, R4, I didn't put the number of lots. I apologize that. But at any rate, cost recovery at 51% build out for R3, 33% build out for R4, and 28% build out in R5. So that's just baseline using the current tap fee on your break even. Oh, it's worth mentioning too, I didn't fluctuate timber rocks. They've got a concept that was approved in the annexation agreement. They're just figuring out their sanitary sewer option, which is one of the things driving this project. Obviously, it's been on delayed. But we kept that at 82 lots and at 135 acres. So that was used for all the scenarios.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, sir.
So on R5, 795 lots, does that sound right?
Yeah, it was 700 something.
Or 795?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, just
I got a calculator, I just,
forgot to fix those when I went through, so. Now, I wanted to give you a couple of alternate scenarios too. So if there was a mechanism to actually collect some additional fee, I did for each zoning district, adding a $1,000 separate fee and then a $2,000 separate fee. Essentially, what you're looking at for R2, you go from break even at 61% build out to 43% build out with a $1,000 fee, and then 33% build out for break even if you collect an additional 2,000. That's at R2 zoning. And I guess there's no need to read those numbers. You see it up there. Same idea. Obviously, the more you request, the less time it takes to break even on it. So those are that's the presentation on the sewer extension and the cost recovery just scenarios. And Chris and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Hey, Scott, what I don't think we're taking into consideration is time, though, right? So we spent $500,000 or $550,000, and we had 2 tap-ins. I mean, that interest is going to eat us alive up until X number of years. Have you got any projections as to if it's going to be a 5 or 10-year time frame?
No, we did not get into that as of yet. We just wanted to make, before we delve any deeper into any analysis and start thinking, we wanted to get an
What's
idea
the
of the
appetite of the
appetite
council to?
before we.
Well, I mean, I think the infrastructure, I think it's a good plan. I'm just, we're not going to get 222 homes in the next year. We're going to get 220 homes in the next 10 years.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're going to have to fund this because you're going to have to buy the whole thing at one time. This is one project, right? You're going to have to spend $500,000 up front. And then build it, they will flush, right?
Yeah, I think the next step was just to throw it out there and see if it's something that we should continue to push forward to. Then if it was kind of like, hey, keep looking at it, then the next step would be to get with some of the stakeholders up there and figure out how this
Yeah.
thing can be implemented.
I mean, I think I like the concept. That's how
Yeah, I think if
we
you just take
develop
the
for
one
future.
watershed in itself, you're looking at probably 135 homes in the short term, but there's other developers that are kind of a different watershed that, again, they're gonna have to spend some money to get to this magical lift station, could be $500,000 each or something, I don't know, so.
And one thing to keep in mind too, don't forget, Timber Rock's already out there with 82 or 83 lots, which is a
82.
huge portion of that. And once
Right.
that's approved,
Right.
that's,
Is that at the end of the line or?
that's at the end of the line. So
Yeah,
they'll
so
be-
we'd
they'll
have to
be
get-
one. So when we talk about cost sharing, that's the one thing we need to, when Chris sit down at the table with the stakeholders, we're talking about those property owners and figuring out if there might be an amicable solution for them to share their costs based on something proportional that makes sense, rather than having the one guy foot all the costs. And, we do not want to get into another recruitment deal if we can avoid it. They are a pain in the rear end. They hang out there forever. They've got, it's just next to impossible to track. So, we'd rather, if there's a funding mechanism we're going to leverage, there are options. We'll talk about one here in a little bit. But, there's the SSA, which.
The special service area.
Special service area, which you could put in to serve only these, you'd put it in the whole area, and then if anything else redeveloped too, you'd be capturing. And that's the other thing on that lot count. Remember, that's only the 100% vacant properties. It's, there's plenty of properties out there with 20 or 30 acres with just a house on it where they've got opportunity for redevelopment too.
Also, Chris, is this going to have any impact on the lagoon situation?
Yeah.
Yes.
The EPA's got the biggest thing on us, and we're gonna have to do something with the lagoon, irregardless of development, due to the phosphorus removal requirements that we have by the EPA.
Will this make us go quicker?
It would all depend on how fast development happens, we've got.
So it could.
It could, the
Okay.
time's ticking, but it's like, it's either A, you don't develop, or B, you do both at the same time. We've got 14 years, but that number could be reduced based on. if
More
the
phosphorus.
Well, if the EPA changed some of the requirements based on, our loadings and how well we keep up with our lagoon and so on and so forth. So, we have to do something. Again, like we said before, we're the largest lagoon in the state of Illinois. They're not gonna let us add another cell. We're gonna have to make a large capital investment on our sewer side, and then we can, not only for compliance, but then also for the future growth for the next 30 years.
Okay, thank you.
But a lot of these, I mean, right now are zoned R2, and R2 doesn't seem to, it's a slower, more methodic build-out.
Right, right.
Yes, sir.
Scott, since it's sanitary sewer, is there any kind of EPA grants or loans or anything they'd be offering since we're trying to be proactive?
That's a qualified yes. Yeah, there are grants and programs out there, but most of them are available based on need, which typically is low to moderate income eligibility. Yeah, our median income is just too high to qualify for most need-based sorts of, I mean, if there was a catastrophic failure or something, you can get into some sort of funding, but for this being just a system enhancement, not likely without having a poorer, different
Forget I asked that.
socioeconomic makeup than we
We don't
have.
want that.
No, we don't want that.
Yes. Okay. Next item we will move to is discussion of an agreement for professional services for TIF Business District eligibility analysis. Mr. Brim?
Scott, do you want to take the opening on that?
Yeah, there's a few things here that are going to be of interest. So we've been approached. So there's a local developer has an interest in purchasing the trailer park on Main Street. Obviously, that would, in my opinion, would be a tremendous benefit to the community. Not that there isn't a role for low-income housing, but that low-income housing in particular, the way it's been maintained over the years, has just fallen apart, and it's not a good, doesn't reflect well on Columbia. And any interest in redeveloping it is definitely something they've got my ear when they start talking. So there's that one, and then everybody knows about the Land of Lincoln property. We don't have anything solid. The developer has given us, some preliminary ideas and given us a preliminary layout that just basically has the north portion of, I think it was roughly 35 acres, in the south about 20 acres. The north part would be single-family residential, and the south part would be commercial. Obviously, there's rumors going on about different potential things going there. I can say that those are the ones that the owner and developer, they've talked to some of the ones that you've been hearing the rumors about, but there's been nothing finalized and nothing brought before us yet. So there's still no plan of what exactly going in there, although I'm of the understanding that we should be hearing some things soon. So we've got those two primary developments that kind of got our discussion going at the staff level. And we're putting our heads together to, because both of them said that there'd have to be some sort of funding mechanism in there just to make it a viable project. And since both of them will have community benefit, we started kicking around some ideas. And really the best two ideas we came up with that and really are made for this sort of project is a business district and TIF. So we took a little bit closer look. And the area in orange is what would be the proposed district. The blue there is the current Main Street Abbey, TIF, and Business Development districts. And then primarily the rest of it, and to be honest with you, there's this area, that's right, I can use my cursor. There's these few lots here that are they're residential, they're homes, and they're zoned R6. So we could modify that and put it almost fully on commercial zoning, if that was the case. That was just basically to have a connection. And to be frank with you, those were added in there once when we learned there were some possible changes to the TIF legislation as an option of expanding the existing TIF versus creating a new one, which would have been more favorable had that legislation gone through. It did not. So we're looking at a new TIF. So there's a little bit of flexibility on the north end there, particularly where it adjoins the Main Street Abbey. So what we've thought about, so there's an existing mix of land uses. As you know, there's residences along there, there's commercial and there's vacant, and there's some that, as I mentioned earlier, was a particular one that's not vacant that maybe we wish would be. There's 26 lots in total. 3 of them are zoned R6. Like I said, I think all 3 of those are up there at this north side. I think one of those is commercial, actually. 2 lots of R7. That's all the Land of Lincoln property. They're not going to do, at least at this point, we've had assurances they're not looking at doing any apartments or multifamily there, even though they do have the right to do so. And then C2, there's 16 lots, and then there's 5 lots of C3. So I'm going to flip back and forth between this slide and the other. So, potentially eligible projects, obviously redevelopment of the trailer park, development of Land and Lincoln property, water and sanitary sewer system improvements. This is number 1, the area we just talked about with the sewer extension. Part of that is in close proximity, and this funding could be used to pay back some of, probably couldn't be used to pay back. I think it has to be part of the plan. But it could be used in some fashion to help improve the infrastructure situation. This area does include part of what's referred to as Old Town, so it's got some of our oldest infrastructure, particularly the farther north portions of it. South Main Street improvements, it's been a while since South Main has been redone. Most recently just paved. That hasn't been that long ago. But there hasn't been a significant redesign to extend what we've got through the heart of Columbia here, in these blocks in the middle of town. So that we've included both sides of Main Street, so that could potentially leverage some funding for improvements to Main Street and all of those intersections. We've included the GM&O Trail in it, so that way that funding could be used toward trail improvements and trailhead parking, what have you. And intersection and frontage roads. We've also included the entire intersection of Main and Route 3, and then all the way down the frontage road too, to be able to potentially leverage some of the funding for those improvements too. Once again, much needed improvements that would benefit the community. And this seems to be a viable opportunity to at least take to the next step to study to get these benefits out of this district. So we have received, so what the purpose would be to identify, the proposal proposes basically this scope. Maybe that's a better way to put it. You would basically go identify what plans are there for private development, what potential city improvement projects would there be in the area. They would assess the site and infrastructure conditions throughout the entire area, do a background data analysis, including, pulling the permits that have been issued, whether they're building permits, zoning permits, special use, et cetera, any code violation issues, any condemnations for unhabitability or anything like that. Take a look at the entire area. And then based on all the information, they would determine the area's eligibility for both TIF and business district. And keep in mind, you wouldn't have to go through the process of approving both of them if one would work better than the other. So that's the reason we're doing both, to see what might be beneficial, either have it in its own utility, or would it would it make the projects more viable and be a good idea to actually do a business district? And if we were just looking at business district, there might be an opportunity for more, a wider area as well. But that's something we're not going to look at there. But there's an opportunity for, to do more on Main Street on either end in the future too. So this could serve as a model, not necessarily for TIF, but business development is too, which is a viable funding mechanism. So the proposal we got from Economic Development Resources, they propose a fee of $27,500 to complete the eligibility study on, that would be conclude both TIF and the business district to determine the eligibility. And you provide us recommendations on what the, better or best option or combination of options might be. Or maybe it's not eligible. And then the next steps, so what we would do is probably, not July 12th, it's the 19th. I was looking at my Plan Commission calendar. It's the 19th for the City Council meeting. The 12th is the Plan Commission. And so assuming the study was approved and the area was to be found eligible, what the future steps would be is to prepare an actual redevelopment plan that would demonstrate all of the eligibility, that actually shows the eligibility, including the revenue projections and what projects might be included. Similar, if any of you were around when the Abbey TIF district was approved, it'd be a similar process. You'd also enter into agreements with the developers to identify what projects they would want funded out of eligible funding, and reach agreement on any cost sharing. For example, who foots the bill of studies if it's, if it doesn't move forward. And then there's legal notices and public hearings, and then finally would be approval after that. So that's the kind of laying out the steps. That's the end of the presentation and everything I have to present at this time, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Who did our last study, Scott?
PGAV.
Do we talk to them this time, or is it worth, we're not taking bids?
There's
And the
good reason
is-
behind that.
Yeah.
The firm I just mentioned had recently, in the last year and a half, they've taken some hits due to one project that had some really bad projections on it because they used wrong tax rates, et cetera. I don't want to say that's the reason, but that there were concerns with some of the other, not concerns per se, but we just felt Gene was the most qualified. As well as, are there cheaper work to be done? Yeah, but we got the most confidence in Gene, based on his reputation and our experience in working with him and the level of detail he'll provide. There are other consultants that I think would definitely do a good job, or do an acceptable job. I think Doug and I both were highly confident of Gene's abilities and his fit for this project.
Hey, Scott, would you just take 30 seconds and tell me where the money comes from a TIF district? I'm not
Sure.
that clear.
I should have asked that up front to make
I mean,
sure
does it,
everybody
like-
understands. Basically, what the idea is, if it's approved, your tax valuation for your parcel is frozen as of the date it's approved.
Property
Okay?
tax.
Property tax,
Okay.
real estate tax. Okay? You make your improvements, your property still gets assessed, and you still pay your taxes as you go along. You pay all your taxes, and then the amount that's above that frozen, the amount that you got frozen at, any amount that's collected over that comes back to the city for allocation toward eligible projects within the TIF area.
The underlying taxing districts continue to receive the same share of the property taxes at the level whenever the TIF district was implemented.
Yes.
And just real quick on the business district side, the way that works, there's up to a 1% additional sales tax that is imposed on businesses located within the business district that's captured by the city through a business district fund that can then be reallocated for certain improvements within that business district area.
Only in the business district.
Correct.
Right. That would be up to 8.5%.
Correct.
Right, but also, it's like the regular food tax, you don't tax pharmaceuticals and grocery items, it's the same standard, there ain't nothing that's titled, like a car title, no, cars don't get hit with it, it's the same standard, but it gives in quarter increments up to 1%.
Quick question. Wait, why just one side of Main Street? Why not, I mean, is there, how'd you determine?
Both developments are on that same side of Main Street, and the rest of them are almost the other side of the street until you get right down to Route 3 is all residential all the way down.
Okay.
And yeah, TIF is not necessarily the best fit for a primarily residential
Okay.
use. You can use it,
Raise my taxes.
but it's typically not desired. That's where the school district would really get, take a hit on.
There's some houses in the, right across from the Abbey and all that kind of stuff. There's some houses that are included in it.
Yeah,
I would strongly encourage the council not to consider any kind of residential projects utilizing TIF.
Okay.
Yeah. And with the caveat, there are a couple of residences sprinkled in here.
Yeah.
So there might be one or two in the middle, but keep in mind, they've not been the ones that are going to be redeveloping. I mean, the city would likely be using some of the proceeds to help serve them and improve the infrastructure. However, it wouldn't be funding other residential development on that lot. Does that make sense? Yep.
Any other discussion on the TIF? Alderman Nemitz?
What kind of staff time are we talking about? Because it looks extensive. It looks extensive on here, and I'll just tie that in with the next question. If it's 27.5 for the city, would we have done this on our own, or are these developments are triggering this? So is there a share on that?
Now, these are typically done by people who specialize in economic development stuff. Gene, I know he's done dozens of these projects. And I don't have the time for an additional, I don't have the,
If I can go ahead and address that concern.
Yes.
I think you
Consultant is
misunderstood me.
Right, if I could,
That's not.
staff
that's not
time
what
on
I
this,
meant.
certainly not working the statutory thing. That's what the expertise that we bring in through a consultant affords us. As far as staff time actually involved with it, the biggest thing is going to be pulling the building permit data, trying to show if there's any kind of lull or what have you in building permits, that things have stagnated, or maybe it's because of like obsolete platting or something of that nature, which is one of the findings for blight. Mr. Smith and his staff, he moved over there, they'll have some work providing information with regards to utilities, the condition of utilities, the age of utilities, but quite a bit of it I feel we do have in GIS already. And we certainly have a robust building permit repository that we have in place that we should be able to pull the data with a simple search.
So you're not anticipating then, I just know we have so many things right now going on with regard to staff time, and you've spoken about those. And our code is one of the main, and definitely our master plan. Those are two things that really need
Mr. Norber and
attention.
his staff, they will provide the attention and the expertise required to minimize staff's outlay.
Did you have a second part to your question, though?
And I apologize, I misunderstood
Just,
the
yeah,
point
I
of your
wasn't
question. I
questioning,
got you.
Scott, you doing it. I just wondered how much this would tie up staff time. And then as far as the fee is concerned, is that fee legitimately only the city of Columbia, or is there?
If I can
Yeah,
address
I'm
that
just-
as well.
I always
With
need
the,
clarification.
with the 27.5 for the eligibility study, yes, that would be appropriate to be footed by the city. The additional fee that would be required for the actual implementation thereof, that can be recaptured and repaid to the city through an inducement resolution whenever the TIF or the business district, whichever direction we would go, would be implemented. We would essentially have the first right to claim reimbursement from any kind of increment generated out of those funds.
Even the first part of the study?
The first part, no. The actual eligibility study, I'm not,
How it sometimes works, if you get a developer that's already in place, will do a project funding agreement, well, they'll cover all the costs, including the original study. But it depends on time and depends on the developer. So can you get it? Yes, if your timing is right.
Yeah.
If your timing is not right, then you're right, you'll have to eat some costs. But there is a way to get this done to where you get these costs covered up front, including attorney's fees, everything.
And I think the developers would be amenable to some sort of arrangement.
This particular developer did this for us on Main Street Abbey. Many of the people here weren't here than I was.
Right.
They ended up through a project funding agreement, they ended up covering all those costs. They did a little bit differently. They tried doing it TIF only at first, and they added the business later. This time, I think they're doing the right thing of doing it all at the same time. I think it's more efficient this way. So they're doing it the right way. Gene's, and I've worked with Gene a lot in the past, so he's the right person. He'll get the job done correctly. But yes, if we get the timing right, get the developer in, I think we get a lot of this covered through the developer, who then is eligible to get those costs. They're considered soft costs under the act, then he or she can get reimbursed for those costs. And this way, the city's made whole on those out-of-pocket costs up front.
Well, I know you mentioned infrastructure, and with regard to Old Town, I mean, we had a large percentage of that done, but then we couldn't continue, and now with Centerville, we'll be addressing part of that. This kind of could be a continuation. It looks like there is a section, as you mentioned, of Old Town in there. I think that's very important because that's one of the oldest sections of town, and that infrastructure really does need to be updated. I think that your city stays as healthy as your oldest neighborhoods and your oldest facilities. So, you know, of course, the trail development and all that is always something I'm gonna be, I know that's not number one, but it's always gonna be. I just wanna know if down the road, what is this all going to cost us to put in place? If we do go with a business district, or we go with a tax increment financing creation, how much are we gonna invest in the long run? And I just wanna make sure that it's not a lot.
You're talking about dollar amount in investing in development, or?
No, just down the road,
in-
because I know there'll be a lot of additional plans and a lot of additional engineering and a lot of additional things, and I'm just wondering, I know this will get the initial eligibility study done, but I'm just trying to look at, I just noted staff time and costs
Yeah.
for the city itself. So you're saying the 27.5 and minimal on staff time to get this
27.5
study
is
done?
for the eligibility analysis. For the actual plan implementation, we didn't put that on there this evening. For the actual plan implementation, you're looking at an additional 27.5.
But that, we can recoup that.
Right, right.
I think
But we,
All of it.
staff time to get the.
I was, just because you have to take that all into the investment.
Yeah. The level of staff coordination that's going to be involved, at least from the community development side, it's not going to be much different than what we're doing. It's just pulling any permits and violations, which that's just running a search and grabbing the documents.
Existing,
Yeah, that's.
like you said, GIS.
From the community development side. Chris might have a little bit more in that, he's going to have to get Public Works involved in the discussion to, talk about conditions and sizes and age of infrastructure, and maybe pull a few plans and whatnot. But once again, that's not going to be very extensive. We're talking about a fairly limited area, and we only have we don't have a whole lot of infrastructure in that area. So it shouldn't involve, I don't even know that I could peg an hour to it, but I wouldn't, maybe 40 or 50 hours of staff time through the study, perhaps.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good. All right.
we
Next
will
item.
move forward for approval on the next agenda.
Okay. Next item is the discussion of recommended change to Park and Recreation Advisory Board bylaws. Mr. Donachie, it's yours again.
All right. So, The current Park and Recreation, let me back up just a second. If you recall, Park and Recreation Advisory Board has only been around since February of 2020. We had a previous body called the Play Foundation. They kind of didn't, they were kind of outdated. We transitioned them to a board that better fit what the needs of the community were and what the needs of our decision makers, into somebody who could really take a look at parks and actually make recommendations, and had a specific set of responsibilities assigned to that. Essentially, they're the Parks and Recreation equivalent of the Plan Commission for all intents and purposes. So they transitioned from the Play Commission to Park and Recreation Advisory Board in 2020. And currently, the bylaws do have one member dedicated to the school district because of obvious reasons. There's a lot of common ground there in terms of recreational facilities and sports play, et cetera. Chairperson of the advisory board, Dave Bernard, he was originally appointed to the predecessor board as a representative of the Columbia Quarry League. Quarry League's now been dissolved, and there's now the Columbia Athletic Association, which is kind of an umbrella association for youth sports in Columbia. That's the way they were formed. And they have the Rookie League Baseball, which serves youth baseball. They do the same for softball, and now the Columbia Soccer Club is part of Columbia Athletic Association as well. So Dave suggested, hey, perhaps there should be a dedicated position for Columbia Athletic Association. And I said, it's probably a good idea. Let's talk to the board, see what they have to say. So that's what we did. At the last meeting, they voted to approve, subject to council approval, a revised bylaw, just that one sentence on that one bylaw. And I put the entire wording up on the top paragraph. So the third paragraph would be changed to one member shall represent Columbia CUSD 4, and one member shall represent Columbia Athletic Association, provided the respective organizations submit a candidate for consideration. I will mention to you that it was noted during this discussion that we now have a full board. There are no vacancies. So if you approve it, council wouldn't be able to fill that vacancy until, or they wouldn't be able to fill that position until the next vacancy opened up. They're aware of it, and they still thought it would be a good idea to add, as do I. I think it's a good idea. I'm on the board of Columbia Athletic Association as well as the city's representative, and they play a huge role in what we do here for recreation and parks in Columbia, and I think it would be a good add to the board, but once again, subject to council decision. So, once again, this is just for discussion as it's new business. There are no major feedback that would be counter that. We'll bring a resolution to the next meeting on July 19th.
Next item will be discussion of a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to convert the Meadow Park Tennis Court to 2 pickleball courts.
Does everybody know what pickleball is? I'll start off with the question first. Okay, so it's a fairly new sport. I did, doing my research, actually dates back to like 1965. And basically it's kind of it combines aspects of tennis, badminton, and ping pong. It's played on a hard surface court, 20 by 44 is the regulation size, same size as a double badminton court. And it's a small wooden paddle. I'd say about racquetball size, roughly.
Yeah, more like.
Only wooden. I guess they make other like graphite and whatever too, but typically played with a wooden paddle. And it's a kind of a hard plastic, like a wiffle ball. It's got holes in it, sort of thing. More like a practice golf ball, only bigger. And it's hit over the net to score points like you would for ping pong or whatnot.
Is it an Olympic event yet?
It is not. As I said, fairly new sport. Surfing's just an
65.
Olympic event. Come on. Are you any good? So anyway, so it's a fairly new sport, but it has become extremely popular. And I'll tell you how popular it is. Before I left 3 years ago from where I moved from, there was a new restaurant. In fact, there's two there now. I just went back for a visit a few weeks ago, called Chicken Pickle. It's actually a restaurant that has a courtyard area with 4 pickleball courts. And you can sit around and play pickleball while you eat, or after you eat, or just enjoy the sport while you're eating. So real popular. We really began fielding a lot of calls a couple years ago, I'd say in 2019. And in fact, I'd say at this point, I probably field more for pickleball than I do for dog park, which I wouldn't have thought would happen because I get a lot of calls about dog park. It was brought to Park and Recreation Advisory Board for discussion. Originally, a local resident asked for it to be put on there. And at the time, we offered to kind of research the options and come up with some ideas for getting a pickleball facility. But we never got the chance to report back because, COVID happened, and here we are. So we finally did report back, which at June 22nd meeting, as I mentioned, which was the first meeting in a number of months. And so staff has taken a look at it, and what we would recommend if it goes forward would be convert the Meadow Park tennis court to 2 pickleball courts. Leave the basketball court where it is. If it needs work, it needs to be maintained or whatever, that's fine. We're not that's not part of this budget or anything. But the reasoning for that, obviously we've got tennis courts in Bolm Shoecraft. However, they're used a lot more than the one in Meadow Park. Not saying that the Meadow Park doesn't get any use, but they're used a lot more. They're in better condition and people like them. And also we have, at least Jabot, I don't know about Columbia High School, but we have agreements with high school to use the tennis courts for practice as well as tournaments. So, once you start putting additional markings on a regulation, that starts getting a little iffy. So, we felt that was a better option. And the other thing is, even if it's not a tournament and it's not regulation play, you're playing for fun, this provides a dedicated facility where you don't have to worry about, the tennis ball getting hit over and whatnot. So anyway, we just felt Meadow was a much better idea. We have done, and a matter of fact, we had a few people in the audience speak in support of it. One of them, believe it or not, lives in Columbia. He's actually a certified pickleball instructor and a pro. By the way, Mayor, I apologize. I gave you the wrong first name when I told you that. I heard
Yes,
you
you did.
accidentally mentioned that to the other guy with the last name, so I apologize for that.
That's all right.
So anyway, he and another enthusiast spoke and said that actually the whole region lacks pickleball facilities. They're getting ready to build one of the biggest ones in the country. He said 15 courts. I think he said in Fenton. He said, but even at that, they got people waiting for hours to get on pickleball courts because there's so few of them. It can be played on a tennis court, but you have to do temporary markings if they're not already marked. So, chalk or tape or something like that if you're going to use it. So, at any rate, after all the discussion and consideration, Park and Recreation Advisory Board did adopt a motion to endorse the proposed conversion of the Meadow Park tennis courts to 2 pickleball courts and recommend that the City Council direct staff to complete the project in the current fiscal year, subject to available funding. So what we're recommending, we have done a little bit of initial research and had a conversation with the contractor who will be doing the resurfacing of the Bolm Shoecraft tennis courts. And based on our initial research, costs should be somewhere in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. What I would recommend is allowing us to get a good quote from that contractor, since we'll be able to double, save some additional costs for, because he would be in Columbia already doing work, and see what kind of, get a full scope of work so you'd be aware of that and know what, and a quote so that we can, and then verify the availability of fundings in the park fund so that you can then decide after we pull that stuff together and bring it back. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. Once again,
All right.
any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
If it's that popular, they may want to monitor that, like they do softball and Corey leagues and all that, right? And not just throw it out there, just rent them out,
Could be, and I'll take this moment to,
Fees and all that.
I'll take this moment then to also plug for the comprehensive plan update that we'll be kicking off at some point this summer. As I mentioned to the folks at that committee, we're going to be doing a very robust community engagement, and we're going to be asking for a lot of community input. So if you do want anything out of your park system, we're going to need to hear that from you, and we're going to need to know where we're meeting your expectations as far as parks and recreation, and where we're not as a community. So start thinking about that and sharpen your pencils.
So we're going to make the other tennis courts into hockey courts in the wintertime.
There's already a hockey court.
I know, right?
There's already hockey.
But we need more. We need more.
Very good. Okay. We'll move on. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next item is discussion of the liquor code. This I put on the agenda to address some things regarding ordinance number 3540, more importantly for the video gaming. I've been doing a little research on this, and a lot of municipalities around the area have a cap on the video gaming license that they issue. And looking at the ordinance 3540, Columbia does not have that. That is something I would like to discuss with the council to try to put a cap on our gaming establishments that we have in town. It's something that, I don't think it fits to have gaming parlors and establishments throughout Columbia, as you see in other municipalities. So I just wanted to kind of have a discussion regarding possibly looking at or revising our ordinance 3540 with limiting the gaming license and establishments on that. And Mr. Brim?
Just to kind of provide a little bit of a background to the council, this was something that we talked about with the previous council. The regulations that were in place while Mr. Dunicky and I and the previous council, we questioned the efficacy of those requirements simply based off of the level of revenue that would be generated off of video gaming versus liquor or other type of sales. It was difficult to enforce that. Therefore, the previous council kind of took the approach that we'll let the free market essentially decide the number of video gaming establishments that Columbia could support.
And I might add, the two license categories that were supposed to be set aside that had the limits on it, they didn't actually require video gaming establishments to have one of those licenses. So that's the reason why there was never any cap, because license had been issued. Other categories had been issued. Because there was no requirement saying that that's the only licenses that a video gaming establishment can have.
So
Yeah,
the
Alderman
question is,
Yes.
during your research, what did you come up with? Was it a per capita, per population, or what was what did other people use?
For instance, our county, or our city to the south, they have a cap of 3 parlors that are allowed.
Okay.
Now, they are different with the gas stations. I think those are capped at 6, if I'm not mistaken here. Yes, they're limited to 6.
Okay, so they
Gaming
didn't
license?
have any population type thing or square?
No, no, sir.
Okay, just an arbitrary number that we think would be best.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I was saying, they're what they consider a parlor, they're kept at 3. And then the convenience stores are at 6. You know, I just don't, it's just my opinion, I just don't want to see gaming parlors popping up or gaming in every establishment in Columbia. I mean, that's just not what I envision Columbia to be or what I want for the future of Columbia to be.
How many do we have now?
We have 3 true parlors with Paradise, Aces Wild, and then the new one that is,
Technically, they're bars with gaming product. We don't have a land use category that's video gaming product.
So we're there.
So you're a
We're already
bar if you
there.
own video game, because you have a liquor license to drink on premises.
which is what the previous regulations were attempting to address, but just misguided.
Yes.
I get
Any
a
other,
question.
yes, sir.
We don't, are you proposing to allow gas stations to have them?
No, sir.
Okay, okay.
I
just misunderstood what you said.
I'm wanting to put a cap on the number of licenses that are allowed.
Because I know that's one of the things we said, we don't want them in our gas
Correct.
stations.
Yes, that is written in the
The police have to handle
Yeah,
it.
that is written in the code.
Okay.
Essentially, what we would do is we would work to better craft a definition of what would be
can.
considered a parlor or a gaming-specific establishment for ultimately inclusion, not only in the zoning code, but in the chapter that you have before you this evening.
There are, I think somebody asked how many are there. I think there are either 11 or 12 currently
Yes.
approved.
License holders,
License holders.
right.
Yes. So I think it would be, I would like for us to kind of go a little deeper on that, to maybe put a cap on the number of gaming licenses that are issued in the city of Columbia going forward.
Better go quick.
We will work on a ordinance that hopefully addresses the, Mary Ellen, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask, so with regard to parlors, bars, organizations such as American Legion, VFW, and things like that, or what cap are you talking?
Bars, mainly. So what the ordinance I've been reading is the nonprofits, organizations like your legions, your fraternal organizations, they don't have a cap on those.
A as in Waterloo?
Yeah, they're nonprofits, they don't have a cap on those. However, convenience stores, bars, they do have a cap on those.
Well, ours was recommended by the police department so that there is not video gaming 24 hours a day in Columbia because they want the hours limited to the hours of the business.
Correct, yeah.
And those requirements can also be imposed as well.
I just don't want, like I was saying, I just don't want to drive down Main Street or any other business area and see gamings and things like that, machines everywhere. It's just not what I see for Columbia and the future of Columbia. I just think we need to put a cap on it. There's plenty of establishments currently where people can go to if they want to partake in video gaming. That's all I have on that.
We will draft an ordinance for further consideration.
Okay. All right. Next item, at this time, we will, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
We will be,
Do you have a second? Second.
We have to go through the
yeah, I'll have to go through
exemptions.
that. So the items for discussion will be 5 ILCS 122C5, purchase of lease of real property for the use of public body. And item 2 is 5 ILCS 122C11, pending or probable litigation. So we'll make,
I'll still make that motion, Mr.
okay,
Mayor.
Mr. Garmer, and second
I
by
still second it.
Alderman Nemitz. Can we get a roll call?
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hoop, Holtcamp,
Yes.
Martins,
Yes.
Riddle. Yes. Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Hello, 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 hello.
Again?
No, just.
No.
You just call
Okay.
to order.
Call the meeting back to order. Any announcements?
Roll call. Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hook, Holtcamp,
Yes.
Martins,
Yes.
Riddle, Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Any announcements?
No, sir.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
Who got the second on?
Isn't there curfew in
Riddle. Ward 1 guys, one out.
Nemitz,
Yes.
Wrestler, Hook, Holtcamp,
Yes.
Martins, Riddle, Garmer,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Guys.